Chapter 140. This young girl was actually one of the assassins in the restaurant. Ling Han's expression was strange. This was too much of a coincidence. This young girl actually hid at his place. But thinking about it, Huyang University was indeed a good place to hide from pursuers, and this place was the most remote corner of Huyang University. It wasn't a coincidence that this pair of assassins chose this place. He smiled faintly, and said, "I don't like it when people point their swords at me." "Hang, you have to like it now even if you don't like it," the young girl said a bit innocently, not showing the slightest bit of an assassin's temperament. Ling Han stretched out his finger and pressed it against the tip of the sword, and said, "You just used mutual acceptance. Do you still have 1% of your battle prowess now?" His physique had already surpassed Dead Tree tier, advancing towards Stone Cliff tier. Even if he didn't circulate his origin power to defend himself, the tip of the sword couldn't hurt his finger. He flicked his finger, and the blade instantly swept to the side. "Much better now." He cracked a smile. The young girl couldn't help but look shocked, and said, "How did you know we used mutual acceptance? This isn't some amazing secret technique." Ling Han shook his head. He didn't have any brothers or sisters in his last life, so when he obtained this secret technique, he only briefly studied it and threw it to the side. He only knew the use and weakness of this secret technique, but couldn't remember the specifics. "Hang, even if I only have 1% of my power, it's more than enough to deal with you, a 6th layer poly," the young girl said, unconvinced, and pointed the tip of the sword back. Ling Han laughed, and said, "If you don't listen, you'll get a spanking." The pervert young girl's pretty face instantly flushed red, and she suddenly raised her sword to attack Ling Han. If this girl's battle prowess hadn't dropped, then Ling Han really wouldn't dare to take the attack head-on. After all, the 7th layer of Gushing Spring tier was much stronger than him, but her current battle prowess wasn't even 1,000th, much less 1%. He was also a freak, and his battle prowess could rival the 1st layer of Gushing Spring tier. As time went by, he gained the upper hand. Peng, peng, peng. With just a few punches, Ling Han had knocked the long sword out of the girl's hand. With a clang, the tip of the sword was inserted into the soil, and the body of the sword swayed. "Must I spank you before you'll be honest?" Ling Han purposely put on a stern face. The young girl was so scared that her face turned pale. Why was she so unlucky? Not only did she fail her first mission, but she had also just left the wolf's den and entered the tiger's den. Shio! Another figure flew out. It was the old assassin. As he waved his hands, the strings of his zither danced. Like heavenly silk, they wrapped around Ling Han. "Old man, although I respect the elderly, if you want to take advantage of your seniority, I won't be polite either," Ling Han said as he waved his fists to block. With the support of his strong physique, the zither strings that could cut through metal could not do anything to his fists. The young girl also raised her sword to meet the attack. The two of them cooperated very well, and when they worked together, their battle prowess increased not just by 1, but by 2 or 3 times. But their power had dropped, and adding on the fact that their opponent was a monster like Ling Han, it was useless even if they worked together. They were suppressed to the point where they had no ability to retaliate. They couldn't help being shocked. Even if their power had dropped, their combined power was enough to suppress any 9th level poly expert. But this youth in front of them was practically a monster, and he was actually suppressing them instead. "If you don't listen, then you'll get a beating." Ling Han's foot flew out, landing on the young girl's butt and sending her flying. Then he punched out, hitting the old man's chest and sending him flying as well. However, after this punch was delivered, Ling Han's expression was strange. That didn't feel right. He walked over to the old man, who had already fallen to the ground and was in so much pain that he could only groan. Ling Han groped around the old man's face for a while, and then suddenly tore off a thin mask. The old man's appearance immediately changed, revealing a beautiful face that was at least 70% similar to the young girl's. No wonder. Ling Han suddenly understood. He had been wondering why this pair of brother and sister had such a big age difference, but it turned out that this brother wasn't actually the older brother, but the older sister who had disguised herself as an old man. Pervert! The older sister shouted angrily with a red face, and then fainted from anger. Ling Han sighed. He hadn't done it on purpose. Who told this girl to disguise herself as an old man? Older sister. After the disguise was exposed, the young girl stopped hiding and immediately called out. But she had been kicked by Ling Han very heavily, and now her butt was numb. She had just gotten up when she sat back down. How troublesome. Ling Han sighed again. Don't you have any other places to hide? Why did you have to come here and cause trouble for me? The young girl revealed a wronged expression. If they had known that there was a pervert living here, they wouldn't have come here even if they were beaten to death. Hey, it's not right to curse people in your heart, said Ling Han. How did you know? The young girl was surprised, and her expression was cute. How can you be an assassin with that kind of personality? Ling Han only felt that the master of this pair of sisters was too much of a failure. How could he train such an assassin? He could practically find a piece of tofu to commit suicide. None of your business. The young girl snorted and ignored him. Be careful, or I'll spank your butt. Ling Han threatened. You dare. The young girl was so scared that her face turned pale again. Usually, the older sister would shelter her from the wind and rain. Now that the older sister had fainted, she suddenly felt at a loss. You only know how to make trouble for me. Ling Han shook his head and reached out to grab the older sister's collar. He then walked over to grab the younger sister and walked into the house. What do you want to do? The younger sister was so scared that her pretty face turned pale. Was this guy going to do something lewd in broad daylight? What do you think? Ling Han deliberately said fiercely. The younger sister was so scared that her eyes widened, and she actually fainted as well. Sigh, I really have to give it to you. You can also be an assassin like this. Ling Han shook his head. At first, the two girls cooperated well with each other, their movements practiced, as if they were experienced assassins, but in the end, they were just rookies. He threw the two girls into Hunyo's room. After thinking for a moment, he moved Hunyo's egg into his own room. He didn't know when the little girl would hatch. After a while, the pair of sisters woke up. When they found that their clothes were intact and there was nothing strange, they were slightly relieved. Sister, while that guy isn't here, let's quickly escape, the younger sister said. How? The older sister smiled bitterly. After we used the two hearts as one, we forcefully attacked. Can you still use origin power now? If we go out now and fall into the hands of those stinky men, I'd rather die. But that guy is so bad. He keeps saying he's going to spank my butt, the younger sister said, feeling wronged. My eyes are clear, and he doesn't seem like that kind of person. The older sister shook her head. Sister, don't forget, he just touched your chest. The younger sister pointed out a fact. Damn girl, nonsense. I was punched by him, the older sister hurriedly explained. What's the difference? The younger sister muttered. Ling Han just happened to push open the door and enter, and his face twitched involuntarily. This pair of sisters were even more noobs than he had imagined. Chapter 141. When Ling Han walked in, the two sisters both revealed wary expressions. Previously, they had still been able to put up a fight, but now, they were like fish on a chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Ling Han moved a stool over and sat down, saying, Tell me about your origins. The two girls shook their heads at the same time, and the younger sister still stubbornly said, A warrior can be killed but not humiliated. Just kill us. Fine, since you want to die so badly, I'll fulfill your wish. Ling Han nodded and stood up. The two sisters still had the spirit of facing death calmly, waiting for their deaths, but their tightly clenched hands betrayed them. Facing death, who could not be fearless? Ling Han rubbed his chin, and said, seeing that you two look quite good, it seems too wasteful to just kill you like this. How can you not keep your word? The younger sister angrily rebuked, hurry up and kill us. Ling Han could not help but laugh, and said, so what if I don't keep my word? You won't have a good ending, the younger sister said with a pale face. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said to the older sister, bringing along such a silly girl must be very stressful, right? You're still scolding me. The younger sister felt extremely wronged. This youth was either scolding her or scaring her, he was really too despicable. Furthermore, he was not even as old as she was, yet he kept calling her a little girl, pretending to be mature. Tell me your names first, or I'll spank your buttocks, Ling Han threatened. I won't tell you, the younger sister said stubbornly. I'm Lu Feng Er, and she's my younger sister, Lu Ru Er, the older sister said. Sister, why did you tell him that we'd rather die than submit, the younger sister Lu Ru Er said with a pout. What about the person you want to kill? Ling Han asked again. She's called Su Ku Xian, and she used to be a member of our Falling Flower Palace, but now she's our enemy. This time, Lu Ru'er rushed to answer. Since she could no longer rather die than submit, someone like her who spoke too quickly would not be able to keep a secret. Why? Ling Han asked again. He felt that he was really too curious, and this was actually none of his business. Su Ku Xian used to be our Falling Flower Palace's #1 assassin, but she actually colluded with outsiders, killed her way into our Falling Flower Palace, and almost killed everyone in our Falling Flower Palace. Although we are the only ones left in the Falling Flower Palace, we will definitely make this traitor pay with his life, Lu Ru'er said with her head held high, looking very impassioned. Pa! Ling Han hit her with a wooden plank. The girl immediately held her head in pain and stared at him with eyes full of bitterness and hatred. Why don't you say it? Ling Han said to his sister. We come from the Fire Nation. The Falling Flower Palace is an assassin organization. We sisters were accepted as disciples by the Grand Elder of the Falling Flower Palace when we were young. Su Ku Xian colluded with the Fire Nation's royal family and slaughtered almost everyone in the Falling Flower Palace. Elder Hua managed to escape with us sisters, but she was also heavily injured. After holding on for a few years, she died last year. Lu Feng'er said. She spoke clearly, unlike her sister, who was jumpy and didn't care if others could understand. And Su Ku Xian's motive for doing this was only to obtain an appearance-retaining pill from the Falling Flower Palace. After she obtained it, she came to Rain Country, and used some unknown method to become the mistress of the Rain Emperor, and was given the title of concubine Yun. We used the keepsake she left behind to lure her out, but we didn't think that in a short 5 years, this woman actually broke through to the spiritual ocean tier, causing all our efforts to go to waste. Ling Han was shocked. For the sake of an appearance-retaining pill, she actually turned hostile and mercilessly, destroying the sect that had raised her. But when he thought about it again, some women loved beauty as much as their lives. For them, to maintain their appearance, they were indeed willing to pay any price. However, this Su Ku Xian indeed had some tricks up her sleeves. She actually managed to wash her face clean, and became the concubine of Rain Country. You too can stay here to recover from your injuries. Once you've recovered, leave immediately. Don't drag me down with you, he said. Lu Ru'er's face was filled with shock, and she asked, why are you helping us? Ling Han laughed, and deliberately said, of course it's because you two are beautiful, and I'll wait for you two to repay me with your bodies. I'm not going to sleep with you. Lu Ru'er immediately said proudly. Silly girl. Ling Han shook his head. After understanding the situation, he naturally lost interest in continuing the conversation, and turned to leave the room. He was willing to save them mainly because he was displeased with Su Ku Xian. That woman actually wanted to kill him, so he naturally had to fight back. Although there were two more mouths, compared to Hunyo's appetite, there was really no difference whether there were more or not between the two sisters. In terms of food consumption, it would not arouse any suspicions. In the blink of an eye, 2 days passed. Ling Han took alchemical pills every day, and his cultivation improved very quickly. However, there was poison in medicine. Although he concocted a large amount of alchemical pills, he could only take 1 or 2 pills every day. Otherwise, if the medicinal poison accumulated, the consequences would be unthinkable. The recovery rate of the Lu sisters was very slow. Using heart and soul as one to stimulate their potential injured their origin, and medicinal pills were basically useless against injuries to the origin. Even if they were useful, they would at least be earth grade and above spiritual medicine. Ling Han was not generous enough to get them for the sisters. There was some change in the egg that Hunyo had transformed into. Its color changed from white to red, and one could faintly see a crimson glow flickering inside, as if this little girl was about to hatch. The people who had gone to the ancient battlefield also returned. The godly medicine had run away, and the spiritual tool had flown away. What should be obtained had naturally been obtained, and what could not be obtained naturally could not be obtained again, so what was the point of staying there? That night, the third imperial prince earnestly invited Ling Han to the Cherishing Flower Pavilion for a gathering. Ling Han had a good impression of this imperial prince, so he decided to give him some face and attend the banquet. The Cherishing Flower Pavilion was the most extravagant money-squandering establishment in the imperial city. Anyone with a bit of status would choose to receive guests here, because not only was there precious food and intoxicating wine, there were also strictly trained female attendants who were as beautiful as flowers and had a myriad of manners. It could be said that with their manners and appearance, they could completely pass off as the noble ladies of the various great clans. This naturally increased the curiosity of men, and they flocked to this place like ducks. However, the threshold to enter the Cherishing Flower Pavilion was too high. Even members of small clans did not have the right to enter this place. Even if they wanted to gift them money, they would not accept it. But the more it was so, the more business in the Cherishing Flower Pavilion flourished. One could not help but sigh in admiration at the master of this place's control over people's hearts. The third imperial prince had not only invited Ling Han, but had also invited many other young geniuses. He had reserved a side courtyard in the Cherishing Flower Pavilion, and could be said to be extremely extravagant. Merely the cost of this one night would be enough for a normal person to live comfortably for the rest of their lives. Ling Han walked leisurely, and arrived in front of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. At the entrance, there were 2 female attendants who were as beautiful as flowers and jade welcoming guests. Their figures were slender, and their quality was considerably high. Big brother Ling." A voice filled with surprise suddenly sounded from behind him. Ling Han turned around, and saw a young man and woman standing side by side. He could not help but smile, and said, "Li Hao, Shui." "It really is you." Li Hao and Zhu Shui both smiled, and hurriedly walked up to greet him. "Hee, should I congratulate you for getting your hands on the beauties?" Ling Han cupped Li Hao's hand, causing the guy to instantly look embarrassed, yet he could not conceal the joy on his face. Chapter 142. Ling Han only needed to think about it for a moment to guess the crux of the matter. Li Hao had entered Huyang University and would definitely have a bright future. The Zhu family was worried that Li Hao would have a change of heart after experiencing the extravagant lifestyle in the capital, so they had Zhu Shui follow him. However, it seemed that this couple had already broken through that layer of window paper, and their relationship had already formed. Ling Han nodded inwardly, feeling happy for them. "Brother Ling, I've been looking for you ever since I entered the institute, but I haven't been able to find you," Li Hao said somewhat guiltily. Ling Han laughed loudly and teased, "You probably haven't spent much time with Shui. That's why you haven't been able to find me, right?" Li Hao immediately blushed. He and Zhu Shui had only had a hazy feeling before, and neither of them had pointed it out. After arriving in the capital, they had been a single man and a single woman, and they had also left their homes, so their feelings had naturally grown. "Brother Ling, you only know how to tease people," Zhu Shui said coquettishly, helping Li Hao resolve the awkwardness. Ling Han smiled slightly. Li Hao was a bit wooden, while Zhu Shui was much more flexible. The two of them complemented each other perfectly. Pauper." At this moment, a soft voice rang out from behind them, and a young man quickly walked over. It was actually the Kong family's eldest young master. When he arrived at Ling Han, he couldn't help but sneer. "What a coincidence to actually run into you here." He had been swindled out of 100 taels of silver by Ling Han. This bit of money was naturally nothing to him, but he was extremely displeased. It was just that Su Ku Xian had interfered, and he hadn't had the time to settle the score with Ling Han. "Young Master Kong, who is this fellow?" A gorgeously dressed woman came over and leaned into the Kong family's eldest young master's embrace. "Oh, just a pauper." The Kong family's eldest young master waved his hand disdainfully. "Who are you calling a pauper?" Li Hao was young and impetuous, and he couldn't help but retort. The Kong family's eldest young master swept his gaze over Li Hao and Zhu Shui, and immediately revealed a disdainful expression. "You two must have just arrived in the capital." "How did you know?" Li Hao blurted out. "Ha, all of you look like country bumpkins. You must have come from some rural corner." The disdain in young Master Kong's eyes deepened. He stared at Zhu Shui and said, "But this country bumpkin is not bad looking. If she dresses up properly, she might have some fun." Bullshit. How could Li Hao allow his lover to be insulted? He immediately punched out at young Master Kong. "Arg!" The beautiful woman immediately screamed. "Stand off to the side." Young Master Kong pushed the seductive woman to the side, then waved his hands in Li Hao's direction. Peng, peng, peng. The two of them started fighting. Li Hao was at the 4th level of Pali, while the eldest son of the Kong family was at the 5th level of Pali. In theory, he should be stronger, but it was obvious that he was piled up with all kinds of resources. His foundation in martial art was not stable at all, and his battle prowess was only at 4 stars. As a result, the two of them fought to a draw. For a moment, the battle was intense, and neither had the upper hand. "Ha ha ha, who would have thought that a country bumpkin would have some strength?" Young Master Kong laughed. "Country bumpkin, how about lending your woman to me for a few days? Don't feel like you're losing out. Under my tutelage, your woman can learn many techniques and let a country bumpkin like you have a taste of something new." Hearing him insult his woman again, Li Hao's eyes turned red. In a rage, he drew his sword and slashed at young Master Kong. "You little brat, you dare use a weapon against me?" Young Master Kong snorted and also drew his sword, fighting against Li Hao. Li Hao roared and finally used his blade chi, which danced towards young Master Kong like a raging dragon. Young Master Kong had forcibly raised his Pali level to the 5th level, so how could he possibly defend against the blade chi? He immediately revealed a panicked expression. In just 2 or 3 moves, his body had already been slashed by the blade chi, causing him to cry out in pain. "Stop! Stop!" He cried out in alarm, hastily stopping the battle. He was not someone with a firm will. "Apologize," shouted Li Hao as he sheathed his saber. The Kong family's eldest young master's face was ashen. He was being asked to apologize to a country bumpkin. If others found out about this, where would his face go? But this country bumpkin was clearly a rash brat. If he were to forcefully resist, he might really suffer a calamity. Just as he was about to lower his head for the time being, his eyes swept over the area, and his face immediately revealed a joyful expression. He said, "Big Brother Tan, save me." A tall and slender young man strolled over. He was handsome, and his every movement exuded a strong sense of confidence. His name was Tan Wei Qi, and he was a member of the younger generation of a middle-class family in the imperial capital. In the imperial city, there were only 8 great clans, and they needed a powerful warrior of spiritual pedestal tier to keep watch. There were many more mid-level clans, because they only needed a powerful warrior of spiritual ocean tier to keep watch. At least, there were even more small clans, and only a warrior of gushing spring tier was enough. For example, although the Kong family's young master was respectfully addressed as young master, in reality, he was just from a small family. It was just that the Kong family had been doing business for generations. Although they didn't produce many experts, their family was well off and was even wealthier than many mid-level families. Because of this, young Master Kong knew many young masters from mid-level clans. This was also his capital. At first, Tan Wei Qi did not recognize young Master Kong, because the latter was currently in a very sorry state. He only managed to recognize him after taking a closer look. He could not help but be surprised, and said, "Kong Wenhui." "Big brother Tan, it's me." Kong Wenhui said with a mournful expression. "Why are you in such a sorry state?" Tan Wei Qi could not help but laugh, because he discovered that Kong Wenhui's opponent was only at the 4th layer of Pali. Kong Wenhui glared fiercely at Li Hao, and said, "It's this country bumpkin who actually dares to act so arrogantly in the imperial city just because he has formed a flash of saber chi." "Oh." Tan Wei Qi swept his gaze over Li Hao, and could not help but reveal an expression of disdain. He naturally could tell with a single glance that this was an outsider. That kind of country bumpkin aura simply assaulted his senses. As a member of one of the great clans of the imperial city, whether it was Kong Wenhui or Tan Wei Qi, they both had a natural sense of pride, and could not accept people who came from other places. "Country bumpkin, kneel down and kowtow in apology." Tan Wei Qi did not ask how the two of them had gotten into a conflict, and immediately ordered Li Hao in a menacing tone. Of course he did not have any misgivings. He was just a country bumpkin, so what kind of background could he have in the imperial city? Li Hao did not dare to be the slightest bit careless. The pressure this person gave him far surpassed that of Kong Wenhui. At the very least, his cultivation base was at the late Pali realm. His saber chi could just barely raise his battle prowess by 1 star, but it definitely could not match up to a 7th layer Pali realm. Unless Tan Wei Qi was also like Kong Wenhui, who only had an empty cultivation base. A trifling 4th layer Pali. "I can suppress you with a single finger." Tan Wei Qi coldly snorted and arrogantly said, "I'm at the 9th layer Pali realm." Li Hao's expression changed greatly. Even if his opponent was also a fake, a 9th layer Pali realm expert should still have 7 stars of battle prowess, and he would still be able to suppress him. "Brother Hao, let it go," said Zhu Shuai. His opponent was too strong, and with Ling Han's strength, although he did not need to fear 9th layer Pali realm experts, this was still the imperial city. Who knew what kind of background each and every one of them had? Chapter 143. The auction ended, and everyone naturally returned to their own homes. Those who had bought an item that caught their fancy were naturally happy, while those who did not could only shake their heads and sigh. Ling Han was the biggest winner today, earning a huge sum of almost 200 million. If word of this got out, there would probably be people who would come to rob him on the way. Just this one haul would be enough to last a lifetime. Fortunately, there were no such people who were blind. When he returned to Huyang Academy, Ling Han slept soundly. In his eyes, a huge sum of 1 or 200 million was not much different from a piece of scrap paper, so there was no need for him to count it like a money grubber. Early the next morning, he naturally woke up to cultivate as usual. His current rate of advancement was too fast. 2 days ago, he had just broken through to the 9th layer of element gathering tier, but now he was already close to the late period of the 9th layer. With just one more step, he would be at the peak period of the 9th layer, and would be able to attempt to break through to gushing spring tier. Should I try out that possibility? Ling Han asked in his mind after he had finished cultivating. In his last life, he had entered into a great many ancient sites, and naturally obtained a great deal of cultivation and martial arts techniques, as well as some handwritten notes that he suspected belonged to a powerful warrior of shattering void tier. There was one possibility mentioned in those notes. 10th layer of element gathering tier 9 was the extreme number of heaven and earth, so in this world, 9 ruled supreme. The most supreme being of 9 and 5 was the ruler of the mortal world. It was the same for martial arts. Whether it was from body refining tier or heaven tier, 9 layers was the extreme number. And from body refining tier to heaven tier, there were actually 9 tiers. The final tier, shattering void tier, was to break through one's shackles and become a god. It was a bridge that led to the other side, and could be considered as the step to escape. However, there was an ancient elite who had mentioned that every tier could actually be cultivated to the extreme level, and then cultivated to perfection. The handwritten note that Ling Han had obtained only mentioned that in element gathering tier, one could form the 10th origin nucleus and break through the extreme number of 9, capturing the step to escape, and truly achieving perfection. The benefits of such a level were endless. One had to know that after element gathering tier was the gushing spring, which was to transform one origin nucleus after another into the mouth of a spring that gushed out origin power. And after the gushing spring was the spiritual ocean, which was to transform the mouth of the spring into an endless sea of origin power. Spiritual pedestal, flower blossom, spiritual infant, deity transformation, heaven tier, the following tiers were all closely related to it. From this point alone, it could be said that element gathering tier was the foundation of martial arts, and had extremely far-reaching implications. Body refining tier only tempered one's flesh and blood, tendons and bones, while element gathering tier opened up one's dantian. It could be said that one had truly embarked on the path of cultivation. Thus, cultivating the extreme level of the human body in element gathering tier and reaching perfection would bring about lifelong benefits. The problem was, that ancient almighty being had only mentioned a theoretical possibility, and had not actually done it himself. That was because he had only considered this problem after he had reached a very high tier. However, time could not be reversed, and he had to start cultivating from element gathering tier all over again. There was a huge gap in the martial arts of this continent, and a large number of pill recipes had also been lost. Presumably, some great calamity had happened in the era of that almighty being. In any case, this idea of his did not spread and was not put into practice, but was lost in the annals of history, until the handkerchief was discovered by Ling Han. For Ling Han at that time, this handkerchief was of course useless, but who would have thought that his physical body would be shattered by the Black Tower, and his soul would be reborn in the body of a young man after 10,000 years, giving him a chance to start all over again. It's as if there is some mysterious will of the heavens. Ling Han rubbed his chin, looking a bit hesitant. Forming the 10th nucleus was no joke. 9 was the extreme number, and that was an absolute balance. However, forcefully inserting the 10th nucleus would undoubtedly break this balance, and lead to a great calamity. Otherwise, with so many elites and geniuses over the generations, how could none of them have thought of 10 nuclei, or even 20 nuclei? This naturally showed how difficult it was to take this step, or even impossible. Forget it, I'll think about it after I reach the peak period of the 9th layer. Ling Han shook his head, and no longer bothered thinking about this matter. At noon, he received a piece of good news and a piece of bad news. The good news was that Mo Gao had come out of seclusion, and had successfully advanced to gushing spring tier. Congratulations on breaking through, Teacher Mo. After Ling Han sensed a powerful wave of origin power, he immediately rushed to Mo Gao's courtyard. Sure enough, he soon saw Mo Gao walk out from his room. Although he looked a bit sloppy, his spirit was shockingly strong. Ha 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 ha, after delaying it for more than 10 years, I've finally broken through, Mo Gao said ruefully. I believe that with Teacher Mo's heart of sword intent, you'll be able to easily cut through the obstacles of martial arts, and advance to a higher cultivation level, Ling Han said with a smile. This was not an exaggeration. With a sword heart that was close to forming, Mo Gao's future cultivation path would be smooth sailing. As the saying went, great talents mature slowly, and he was about to welcome a great explosion. Mo Gao smiled. As a martial artist, how could he not desire to increase his cultivation level? It was just that in comparison, he was more passionate about the sword. Now that his sword heart was forming, his cultivation level was also increasing, so how could he not be satisfied? Your cultivation level. Mo Gao's expression suddenly changed. He pointed a finger at Ling Han, his face filled with astonishment. Ninth layer of element gathering tier. He suddenly felt like he was going to faint. Previously, when Ling Han had just arrived, he was only in the 5th layer of element gathering tier. But only a little more than a month had passed, and this guy had already advanced to the 9th layer of element gathering tier. It was very likely that it would not be long before Ling Han surpassed him. What a freak! Ling Han nodded, and said, the advancement of my cultivation level is indeed a bit slow. He even sighed. Showing off. Even with Mo Gao's cultivation of sword heart, he could not help but want to burst out in profanity. This brat was really too good at showing off. Get lost, he said in exasperation. Ling Han laughed loudly, then took his leave. Mo Gao had just broken through, so he needed some time to stabilize his cultivation level. And the bad news was brought by Lu Yutong. Actually, this news had long since been expected, but it had just arrived a bit too late. The ready-made clothing stores that Ling Han had opened had all been robbed and destroyed the night before. Now, the doors of the stores had been smashed, and the clothes had either been robbed or torn to pieces. Not a single store was still open. Obviously, this was the beginning of Qin Yunxiang's, or rather, Sun Ziyan's, counterattack. Yesterday's peaceful mediation had failed, so they began to take action that very night. They had probably mobilized the power of the earth and water faction. Those ruffians were naturally very skilled at doing this kind of thing. What do we do now? Lu Yutong asked Ling Han. Since our opponents are not playing by the rules, then we can only use force. Ling Han smiled faintly. Lu Yutong was shocked, and said, you have to kill your way to the Qin clan residence. Sun Ziyan will definitely be able to guess that the Qin clan residence will definitely be heavily guarded today, and there might even be the presence of the Imperial Guards. If you start a fight with the Imperial Guards, then no one will be able to save you. The Imperial Guards represented the Imperial clan. Starting a fight with the Imperial Guards would be no different from starting a rebellion. Ling Han broke into a grin, and said, since that grandson wants to play, then I'll play with him. Anyways, I have nothing to do now, so let's go to the Earth and Water faction and deal with this lackey first. Lu Yutong felt even more dizzy, and said, the sect leader of the Earth and Water faction, Yang Tiandu, is in the spiritual ocean tier. And, so we have to make a trip to the Heaven Military Hall first, Ling Han said with a smile. Chapter 144. Tan Wei-Chi immediately lowered his head and admitted his mistake, saying, young Master Han, I was blind, please forgive me, young Master Han. Though Kong Wenhui was displeased, seeing that even Tan Wei-Chi had lowered his head, how could he remain firm? He also lowered his head and said, I was wrong, please forgive me, young Master Han. Get lost. Ziyan pointed a slender finger and shouted at the two of them. The two of them secretly thought that they were lucky, and hurriedly tried to escape. Who allowed you to leave? Ling Han spoke up. Ziyan could not help but look displeased. She was the third imperial prince's most trusted person, and anyone who saw her in the entire imperial city would have to address her as Lady Ziyan and be polite. But she had already mediated, yet Ling Han still did not give up. Was he purposely making her lose face? Tan Wei-Chi and Kong Wenhui observed their expressions, and were instantly delighted. As long as the relationship between Ling Han and Ziyan became strained, then they would immediately be able to regain the upper hand. Meanwhile, Li Hao and Zhu Shui became nervous about Ling Han's aggressiveness. Does young Master Han have any other instructions? Tan Wei-chi asked respectfully. He knew that the more respectful he acted now, and the more arrogant Ling Han was, the more it would arouse Ziyan's disgust. I've already said it just now. The two of you will dance a striptease here for an hour, and this matter will only be considered settled today, Ling Han said. Young Master Han, a gentleman would rather be killed than humiliated. Kang Wen-hui was obviously an expert in the area of scheming, and immediately cooperated with Tan Wei-chi, deliberately showing an extremely angry expression. Who would believe that he was the one who had first suggested for Zhu Shui to dance a striptease? As expected, Ziyan's displeasure became even greater. She did not notice the entire process of the matter, and only knew that it was Ling Han who was being too overbearing. However, Ling Han was someone whom the third imperial prince wanted to befriend, so she similarly did not dare to offend him. She said, "Young Master Han, isn't this a bit too much? Why don't you let them prepare some gifts of thanks, and apologize to young Master Han and his two friends tomorrow? We will listen to Lady Ziyan's instructions." Tan Wei-chi and Kang Wen-hui immediately nodded respectfully. Brother Ling, forget it. Li Hao and Zhu Shui also tried to persuade him. Ling Han was unmoved and said, "There's no need to go through so much trouble. Let's just do a striptease here today and we'll be even. Don't go too far." "I don't believe you'd dare kill anyone," shouted Kang Wenhui, trying to provoke him. Ling Han smiled calmly, and said, "With the laws of the empire in place, who would dare to disobey them? However, it's only the two of you who are insignificant characters, so it would be best for you to obediently jump. Otherwise, I will strip off your clothes and hang you on this street to dry for 3 days and 3 nights. Young Master Han." Ziyan could not help but interrupt, a sliver of coldness on her pretty face. "What? Do you have a problem with that?" Ling Han walked towards her. "Ha ha ha ha, how is that possible?" A long laugh rang out as the third prince strode out. "These two actually dared to delay my meeting with Brother Ling. How could they not be severely punished?" "Third prince!" Tan Wei-chi and Kang Wenhui exclaimed at the same time. They had not thought that the relationship between Ling Han and the third prince would be so good. Only now did Kang Wenhui guess Ziyan's identity, and he could not help but tremble in fear. That was the third prince, an imperial prince who held real power and might even have the chance to inherit the throne in the future. Ziyan immediately retreated and stood behind the third prince, as if she was his shadow. "You heard Ling Han's words. Just dance here," the third prince said lightly, but his tone was stern that could not be refused. This was the aura of someone in a superior position. Tan Wei-chi and Kang Wenhui looked like they were struggling, but in the end did not dare to disobey. They began to take off their clothes, full of humiliation. "Brother Ling, please," the third prince said with a smile. With his status, he naturally would not stay here to do a striptease with 2 men. "You don't mind if I bring 2 friends with me, right?" Ling Han asked with a smile. "Of course not." The third prince laughed loudly. Ling Han smiled at Li Hao and Zhu Shui, and said, "If you two have nothing else to do, then join us." "Really?" Li Hao and Zhu Shui's heartbeats instantly sped up. That was the third prince. If they could have a meal with him, who would dare to bully them in the imperial city in the future? Ling Han must have thought of this as well, which was why he had invited them. Instantly, they felt a strong sense of gratitude. "Of course you can," Ling Han said with a smile. "Then many thanks, Big Brother Ling, many thanks, third prince." Li Hao and Zhu Shui both said, their eyes filled with passion as they looked at Ling Han. This guy had only arrived in the imperial city for a few days, and he had already become an honored guest of the third prince. He was really too awesome. The 5 of them turned around and entered the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. As for the pitiful Tan Wei-chi and Kang Wenhui, they continued to perform a striptease. Even if the third prince and the others were not here, they did not dare to take the chance to run away. Otherwise, if the third prince pursued them, the consequences would be extremely serious. Two grown men taking off their clothes in public, and dancing as they did so. What a rare sight it was, and it instantly attracted the attention of the crowd. How immoral, they're actually doing a striptease here. Hee hee, the key is that there are two men. If there were two beauties, that would be much better. Che, those two little birds of yours, they're not even half the size of mine. Come on, if you expose your little birds in front of so many people, you might end up shrinking even smaller than them. Is there anyone who can take care of this? Two grown men doing a striptease in the middle of a busy city, wouldn't it be bad if little children saw them? Everyone started to tease them, causing Tan Wei-chi and Kong Wenhui to be on the verge of tears. Big brother Tan, what should we do? Kong Wenhui asked with a tearful expression. This time, not only had he lost face, he would definitely drag the clan behind him into becoming a laughingstock. In the future, his status in the clan would also fall because of this. Shut up. Tan He-chi's expression was murderous. If it were not for his relationship with Kong Wenhui, how could he possibly have fallen to such a state? He hated Ling Han, but he hated Kong Wenhui even more. Seeing the two grown men swaying their little birds coyly, everyone laughed loudly. After entering the Cherishing Flower Pavilion, Ling Han had completely forgotten about Kong Wenhui and Tan He-chi. He would not go so far as to hold a grudge against these two minor characters. Of course, if they did not admit defeat today, then what awaited them would definitely be a thunderous blow. The third imperial prince had reserved a side courtyard, and by now, there were already many guests. When it came to Ling Han, they all looked very strange, and began to guess his identity. Not only did the third imperial prince send out Miss Ziyan to receive him, he even went out himself. Come, let me introduce to everyone. This is brother Ling Han, Fu Yuansheng's close friend, and is also on very good terms with Wu Songlin, Grandmaster Wu, the third imperial prince said with a smile. When he found out that Ling Han was actually Wu Songlin's representative, he was given a great shock. There were only two black-grade high-level alchemists in Rain Country, and they both had a very deep relationship with Ling Han, so he did not dare to be negligent. Hiss, the others all exclaimed in shock. Close friend, how could these words be used so carelessly? It was more refreshing to read on one's phone. Chapter 145. Ling Han could have been a trump card for the third imperial prince, but why did he have to use it so soon? That was because he was in the crucial period of the competition for the throne. The people invited to the banquet today were all outstanding descendants of the mid-level clans of the imperial city. If he could make them declare their loyalty to him, that would be equivalent to gaining the approval of these clans. Not to underestimate these clans, the hundreds of mid-level clans added together would also be a considerable force of influence. More importantly, the 8 great clans were too aloof. No matter which imperial prince ascended to the throne, they would still be the 8 great clans, and would not advance or retreat. On the contrary, every Rain Emperor had to coordinate the relationship between the 8 great clans. They were the pillars of the nation. Thus, it was impossible to win over the 8 great clans, so the third imperial prince could only focus his attention on the mid-level clans. Why were only 30 or so people here today? That was because the other mid-level clans had already been divided between him, the eldest imperial prince, and the 7th imperial prince. Only these indecisive clans were left. In the end, no matter which imperial prince ascended to the throne, the clans that stood on the wrong side would definitely be ostracized, and it was not impossible for them to dejectedly leave the imperial city. Hearing that Ling Han actually had the backing of 2 great black-grade high-level alchemists, everyone looked shocked. Too awesome, right? However, the status of alchemists was aloof, and they would not actively participate in the power struggle. Now that Ling Han and the third imperial prince seemed to be very close, did this mean that the third imperial prince had the support of 2 great alchemists? Heavens, that would be incredible. With the support of these 2 awesome masters, even if the current reign country already had a successor for the throne, they would still have to reconsider, lest after the new emperor ascended to the throne, these two super alchemists would not be cooperative and fight with each other. In the competition for the throne among the three imperial princes, the third imperial prince originally had a higher chance of winning, and now that he suddenly had the support of two great alchemists, he was instantly assured. Thinking this way, these young people instantly became extremely friendly, and lowered their stance even more. Originally, although they considered themselves to be subordinates, they still had some pride in their bones, because this was the third imperial prince trying to win them over, but it was different now. After knowing the third imperial prince's trump card, these people all actively approached him. They were black-grade high-level alchemists, and any alchemical pills he threw out was enough to make them go crazy. When the third prince saw this, a smile appeared on his face. This was exactly what he had hoped for. The reason why he could not wait to play this card was because the current reign emperor had plans to abdicate his throne and focus on studying martial art. At most, within 5 years, a new emperor would ascend the throne, so he had to make the best use of his time. Ha 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 ha, let's drink. The third prince raised his wine cup. Immediately, everyone raised their cups. When the third prince finished his wine, the others naturally did not dare to leave any wine in their cups. They drank it all and only sat down after the third prince sat down. The third imperial prince was very pleased with himself. He was only in the Cherishing Flower Pavilion now, but in the future, in the imperial court, there would be even more important figures who would submit to him. The female attendants who accompanied them to drink poured wine for everyone again. The reason why the prices of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion were so expensive was because these female attendants were not only beautiful, but also had an extremely elegant demeanor. Some of them even had a cultivation level of polytier. To be able to have them accompany them to drink, it would give men a very strong sense of subjugation. Ling Han was one of the most dazzling stars of the night. He was accompanied by a beautiful woman on either side of him, and both of them had a cultivation level of polytier. One had to know that they were all young girls in their 20s, yet they had already broken through to polytier. Though they were extremely talented in their own right, they had also required a large amount of resources to achieve this. These two girls had undergone strict training. Their words were gentle, and their movements were light. What was even more remarkable was that they were very good at reading people's expressions. Ling Han only had to glance at them, and they would know which dish Ling Han wanted to eat. They would immediately take the initiative to pick up a dish and place it into Ling Han's mouth. This kind of ecstasy would definitely cause young people to be unable to control themselves and easily fall into the trap of gentleness. However, what kind of temperament did Ling Han have? He had been surrounded by tens of thousands of flowers, but not a single leaf had touched him. He was also not restrained, and calmly enjoyed the service of the two girls. However, his eyes were clear and bright, without any hint of impatience. This caused the third imperial prince, who had been paying attention to him, to involuntarily raise his opinion of him by a few notches. He even had the illusion that the one who had arrived was not a 16 or 17-year-old youth, but a supreme elite who had experienced many hardships and had seen countless grand occasions. Ling Han had the backing of two big bosses of alchemy, so he naturally became the target that everyone tried their best to curry favor with. However, Ling Han had no intention of paying them any heed. He only occasionally spoke a few words with the third imperial prince, Li Hao, and Zhu Shuai, and spent most of his time eating. This was very normal. In his last life, he had been the alchemy emperor, so how could he be in the mood to deal with these little fellows who thought highly of themselves? Towards this kind of arrogance from Ling Han, no one felt that there was anything wrong in the slightest, because alchemists were prideful existences in the first place. If Ling Han did not have this kind of arrogance, it would instead be abnormal. Seeing that Ling Han was not easy to deal with, they naturally turned their attention to Li Hao and Zhu Shuai. They earnestly invited them, causing Li Hao and Zhu Shuai to feel extremely flattered. Previously, a young master from a small clan had dared to humiliate them, but now, a large number of young masters from mid-level clans were fighting to be friends with them. The two of them could not help but look at Ling Han gratefully. All of this was because of him. The third imperial prince saw that Ling Han was only drinking and eating, and was not like the others, taking advantage of the opportunity to grope the female attendants by his side. He opened his mouth and said, "Brother Ling, are you not satisfied with these two beauties?" Hearing these words, the two beauties simultaneously revealed aggrieved expressions. They were lovely and moving, and even if he knew that they were only acting, he could not help but feel pity for them. "Ha, Brother Ling, if you think that they are not gentle enough, why don't you let Ziyan accompany you?" the third imperial prince suddenly said. Ziyan's pretty face instantly changed, and she could not help but tremble. Aggrieved expressions appeared in her eyes. She was no longer acting, but truly felt pain in her heart. She had originally thought that she held an extremely high position in the third imperial prince's heart, but she had never imagined that she was actually a card that could be played. Li Hao and Zhu Shuiyi's hearts thumped rapidly when they heard this. Previously, Ziyan had been so awe-inspiring, but now, she was going to accompany Ling Han to drink. The contrast was really too great. Ling Han smiled and said, "Is Miss Ziyan willing?" Ziyan's body trembled again, but she said, "Ziyan is willing." Ling Han, however, shook his head and said, "A gentleman does not snatch the good things of others. Miss Ziyan is the third imperial prince's woman, so it is better for you to accompany the third imperial prince." Ziyan immediately revealed a grateful expression. She admittedly did not dare to disobey the third imperial prince's orders, but being able to escape this calamity naturally caused her to have a much better impression of Ling Han, and gained a new understanding of the third imperial prince. In front of the imperial throne, everyone was just a chess piece that he could use. She had blindly followed him, so what kind of ending would she be walking towards in the end? She appeared to be slightly at a loss. "Ha ha ha ha, third imperial prince, I have come late. Can you come in for a gathering?" Just at this moment, a clear and bright voice came from outside, but it was filled with a powerful aura. The third imperial prince's expression changed slightly, and he blurted out, "Feng Yan." Chapter 146. Ling Han had already heard of Feng Yan's name many times. At the Seven Wind Mountains, he had met Feng Luo and heard of Feng Yan's name for the first time. Li Hao and the others held him in high esteem. Then, during the De Yuan tournament, Feng Yan's name was often brought up. This was a genius that could overshadow Qi Yongyi, Li Dongyu, and the others. When he arrived at Huyang University, he found out that this person's ability could rank in the top 10 among the true disciples, and even had the right to challenge the three core disciples. Because of Feng Luo, he could not avoid coming into conflict with him. Today, he was finally going to meet him. "Ha, Brother Feng, no matter when you come, I will welcome you with open arms," the third imperial prince said loudly, laughing loudly. Xiao, a figure shot into the courtyard. It was a slender man with bright eyebrows and bright eyes. He had a head full of thick black hair, and it was as if there was a layer of divine light enveloping his entire body, exuding a faint radiance that would make others admire him with a single look. Ling Han's eyes suddenly narrowed. Seventh layer of gushing spring tear. Before the new year, wasn't this person only in the third layer of gushing spring tear? How did he suddenly advance 4 small tiers in a mere 2 months' time? This was even more awesome than Ling Han. This guy must have obtained some extremely great fortune. Otherwise, Ling Han was already a medicine pot, and with the perfect combination of an immortal grade spirit base and an immortal grade cultivation technique, who could surpass him in the advancement of cultivation? Feng Yan, even among the younger generation of Rain Country, was famous, and no one dared to underestimate him. This person could very possibly advance into spiritual pedestal tier, and become a powerful warrior of Rain Country's martial art. Brother Feng. The third imperial prince stood up and clasped his hands in greeting. Though his cultivation level was higher than Ling Han's, he did not have a sliver of divine sense from Ling Han's previous life in heaven tier. Separated by such a long distance, he could not discern Feng Yan's cultivation level. Moreover, who would go and observe another person's cultivation level for no reason? Third Imperial Prince. Feng Yan also cupped his hands in greeting. His gaze swept across the crowd, and he said, I have taken the liberty of coming here today for 2 reasons. 1. To pay my respects to Third Imperial Prince. 2. I have heard that a certain despicable person who framed my younger brother and almost caused him to be expelled from the academy is also here. When he said the last sentence, his gaze stopped on Ling Han. Obviously, he recognized Ling Han. The third prince's heart skipped a beat, and a surge of anger rose within him. It was obvious that Feng Yan was here to seek revenge. The problem was, this was a banquet that he had organized, and Feng Yan had come to make trouble just like that. This was not giving him any face at all. He indeed thought highly of Feng Yan, but Feng Yan was only a martial artist after all. To be honest, Feng Yan's cultivation level was not even as high as his, and the only thing that could make him think highly of Feng Yan was his future potential. In terms of background, the Feng clan was only in Gushing Spring tier, and in terms of personal ability, Feng Yan was only in the 3rd layer of Gushing Spring tier. What right did he have to not give him face? In the 3rd Imperial Prince's heart, Ling Han, who had the backing of 2 big bosses of alchemy, was obviously far more important than Feng Yan. Thus, he naturally did not hesitate and decided to support Ling Han. He said, Brother Feng, I was also present during the incident with your younger brother, and I can guarantee that it was indeed your younger brother who wanted to frame Brother Ling. Yet Ling Han frowned, because according to Feng Yan's words, he had almost been expelled from the academy. That meant that Feng Luo was still staying in the academy. What was going on? He wanted to deal with an old lecher, but ended up suffering a setback. Now, he had just chased Feng Luo out of the academy, and now this Feng Yan had appeared. He did not know what method he had used to drag Feng Luo back into the academy. The academy has already investigated and found that it was all Wei Heili's fault. He was the one who stole the badge that I lent to Feng Luo. And I suspect that Wei Heilu is in cahoots with Ling Han, and is purposely framing my younger brother, Feng Yan said darkly. Fuck, could he not be so shameless? All of this was obviously planned by Feng Luo, so why was it that when it came from Feng Yan's mouth, he became the victim instead? Black and white had been reversed just like that. Yet Ling Han was not the slightest bit angered. History was written by the victors in the first place. In this world, those with bigger fists were the truth. However, what he did not understand was that Feng Yan was obviously only in the 7th layer of Gushing Spring tier, so how could he be so confident and fearless? One had to know that even if Feng Yan had broken through to Spiritual Ocean tier, he was still a subject of Rain Country, and had not reached the level where he could break away from the power of the royal family. This would require him to at least be in Spiritual Pedestal tier, and if he was in Flower Blossom tier, then he would have already transcended the mortal realm. Feng Yan should definitely not be such a stupid person. The 3rd Imperial Prince had not thought that Feng Yan would dare to oppose him. His mind spun quickly. Could it be that Feng Yan had thrown his lot in with eldest brother or 7th brother, and that was why he was not afraid of him? But no matter what, a mere subject actually dared to talk back to him in his face. This was a provocation, and something he could not tolerate. Feng Yan, be careful with your words. He withdrew his smile, and his expression was completely serious, exuding a faint sense of authority. Once the emperor was enraged, blood would flow for thousands of miles. Though the 3rd Imperial Prince was not the emperor yet, he could use the power of the nation to a limited extent, which instantly elevated him to a high and mighty position, as if he was an emperor, causing others to only feel reverence in their hearts. 3rd Imperial Prince, hand him over to me, and I will give you face and not kill him. Feng Yan was not afraid at all, and instead raised his conditions to the 3rd Imperial Prince. The entire crowd was in an uproar. Had Feng Yan gone mad? That was the third imperial prince, the strongest person in Huyang University, and his own power was enough to suppress Feng Yan. What more when he was the imperial prince of the empire, and his power could be said to be monstrous. Even if the third imperial prince was very shrewd, when he heard these words, his face still trembled slightly, showing the fury in his heart. He took a deep breath, suppressed all these emotions, and said calmly, "You've gone a bit too far. Does the third imperial prince not want to hand him over?" Feng Yan revealed a mocking smile. "Could it be that you still dare to make a move in front of me?" The third imperial prince said coldly. He was really angered now. Capturing evil people is everyone's responsibility. The third imperial prince wouldn't be thinking of shielding me, right? Feng Yan strode forward, actually not afraid of the third imperial prince at all. Impudent! Ziyan jumped out, and with a wave of her hands, a gleaming blue dagger appeared in each of her hands. She charged towards Feng Yan. Shua, 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 the blue light danced, forming a sky full of sword images, as if it was a screen of light. Insignificant tricks. Feng Yan snorted, and punched out. This punch of his was terrifyingly strong, as if a mountain was pressing down. The punch had just been thrown out, but Ziyan's face had already turned pale, and her head of black hair began to dance, as if a hurricane had started. Bang! Before this punch had even landed, Ziyan had already been sent flying by a powerful force, and an arrow of blood shot out of her mouth in midair. This, everyone was shocked. Feng Yan actually dared to attack and injure someone. Had he gone mad? Or did he have some shocking trump card? Trash! The third imperial prince snorted lightly. He was already angry, and his subordinate had been defeated with a single punch, causing him to lose control of his emotions, and he could not help but spit out these two words. As if she had received a heavy blow, Ziyan's delicate body trembled again, and she spat out another mouthful of blood. However, Feng Yan only stared at Ling Han, and said darkly, "You are very daring." Chapter 147. Ling Han's group moved in a mighty manner. Guang Yuan and the others all had a hint of a meaningful smile on their lips. They were lone cultivators, and their temperaments were wild and untamed, but none of them were idiots. From the attitude of those two imperial guards earlier, they could tell that Ling Han's identity was definitely not simple. Even the imperial guards seemed to be blind to side with him, so this trip was a daunting one without any mishaps. The Earth and Water faction only had 3 spiritual ocean tier martial artists and a few dozen gushing spring tier martial artists, which was much weaker than their group. The group swaggered through the streets, and very soon, they arrived at the Earth and Water faction. Though the Earth and Water faction was a faction in name, in reality, it was no different from a clan's power. They had a courtyard that occupied an extremely large area in the city, and all the leaders of the faction lived here. At this moment, the main entrance was already on standby. Obviously, after Ai Lian had returned to report the news, the Earth and Water faction had already made their move. "Sir, you first snatched the treasures of our faction's disciples, and now you've come to our door so aggressively. Could it be that you think there's no one in our Earth and Water faction?" An old man said darkly, his body exuding a powerful aura. Ling Han could not help but smile. So it turned out that the Earth and Water faction had mistakenly thought that the cause of the incident was the golden flower of the stone. He shook his head, and said, "Your intelligence department is really too poor. You've smashed so many of my shops, and you don't even know who I am." The old man was an elder of the Earth and Water faction, and his cultivation level was at the 2nd layer of the spiritual ocean tier. His name was Lu Yu. He stared at Ling Han for a while, but found that the latter's appearance was really unfamiliar. That's right, smashing people's shops was a small business for the Earth and Water faction, and it was absolutely impossible for it to alarm a big shot like him. He had absolutely no idea that he had made such an enemy. At this moment, a middle-aged man's expression changed, and he moved closer to Lu Yu's ear and whispered a few words. The old man nodded slightly, revealing an expression of disapproval. Fuck, so it's just a small matter like a few ready-to-wear shops being smashed. In Lu Yu's eyes, how could the value of a few ready-to-wear shops compare to the golden flower of the stone? You snatched the treasures of his faction's disciples, and the value of this was already several hundred times that of the shops that had been smashed. No matter what, the Earth and Water faction was the one who suffered the most. This brat must be the young master of some rich family, and had been spoiled since he was young. That was why he acted on impulse, coming over to seek revenge after a few shops were smashed. Hang, I don't know what you're talking about, but you keep pouring dirty water on my faction. Lu Yu completely denied the matter of smashing the shops. After all, this was not a glorious thing to say. Although the Earth and Water faction was just a gangster faction in the eyes of the people of the Imperial City, they themselves thought very highly of themselves. Leave behind the golden flower of the stone, and pay another 10 million silver coins. Then you can get lost, he said to Ling Han unyieldingly. Ling Han snickered, and said, you really are domineering. However, do you guys have the confidence to be domineering? He began to walk towards the main doors. How dare you? Immediately, someone leaped out and grabbed at Ling Han's throat, wanting to take him down in one fell swoop. Get lost. Another person leaped out from behind Ling Han, and his sword flashed like water, sweeping towards that person. The expression of that person from the Earth and Water faction could not help but tighten. He hurriedly turned around and stepped aside, only to see that there was already a middle-aged man wielding a sword standing in front of Ling Han. The aura exuding from him was not the slightest bit weaker than his own. Ling Han did not even pause for a moment, and continued to advance. This kind of contemptuous attitude greatly enraged the members of the Earth and Water faction. They all leaped out and charged towards Ling Han. However, those people that Ling Han had hired naturally could not just take the money and do nothing. They all leaped out and protected Ling Han. This was 100 against 13, and Ling Han's side had a great advantage. Moreover, there were still 7 elites of spiritual ocean tier who had not made a move yet. Only now did Lu Yu realize that there were still 7 people whose auras were not the slightest bit weaker than his own, and his expression involuntarily tensed up. They were in the gushing spring tier, so it did not matter how many people there were. As long as he could severely wound a few of them with lightning speed, it was guaranteed that the rest would flee like rats. They were lone cultivators, after all. When they had the upper hand, they were fiercer than anyone else, but once they fell into a disadvantageous position, it was guaranteed that they would turn into a pile of loose sand and flee faster than anyone else. However, now that 7 elites of spiritual ocean tier had actually appeared, it was not easy to deal with them. This brat was really rich and overbearing, actually hiring elites of spiritual ocean tier. No wonder he dared to come here and challenge them. Lu Yu thought for a moment, then said, friends, no matter what conditions this brat offers you, as long as you can stand by and watch today, the Earth and Water faction will pay the reward he promised. He could be considered to be quite decisive. Guang Yuan snickered, and said, Elder Lu, as a person, we must keep our word. Moreover, we have already accepted a mission from the Heaven Military Hall. If we shirk our responsibilities now, who would dare to hire us in the future? You recognize me? Lu Yu asked. Hehe, Elder Lu Yu is also known as the Soft Yang Needle. You are skilled in using hidden weapons without anyone noticing. Who wouldn't recognize you? Guang Yuan said calmly. Then, he waved his hand, and said, the main character today is young Master Han. If you have anything to say, just say it to young Master Han. We are only responsible for protecting young Master Han's safety. Old fox. Lu Yu cursed in his mind. He had originally wanted to use the Earth and Water faction to pressure the other party, but the other party had casually pushed the responsibility onto Ling Han. This made him feel as if he had punched cotton, and it was very uncomfortable. Brat, It's not too late to stop now, he said to Ling Han, as long as you compensate for the losses of my faction. Just as he was mumbling, Ling Han suddenly shot out a punch, and actually knocked the signboard off the door. With a pang, it fell to the ground. This signboard was made of bronze, and the loud sound it made when it fell to the ground caused a lot of people to jump in fright. When the members of the Earth and Water factions saw this, their eyes all turned red. That was the signboard of the Earth and Water faction. As the saying went, don't hit people in the face. This signboard was equivalent to the face of the Earth and Water faction, and now that it had been smashed to the ground by Ling Han, everyone was naturally enraged. Ling Han smiled calmly, and said, "Last night, you all had a good time making a ruckus in my shop, right? Today, I'll let you all have a good time as well." He raised his foot, and suddenly stomped down. The power of the 9th layer of element gathering tier exploded. Pa! This signboard instantly split down the middle, and broke into 2 pieces. "You're seeking death." The members of the Earth and Water faction were all enraged. They wanted nothing more than to tear Ling Han into 1,000 pieces. Although it was not allowed to kill within the Imperial City, that did not mean that they had to endure when someone came knocking on their door. Wounding someone in self-defense or killing someone was not a crime. Ignorant brat. Lu Yu's killing intent was completely revealed, and he suddenly leaped towards Ling Han. With a raise of his hand, shio, 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 9 golden needles shot out, intertwined with his unique origin power. They had the effect of piercing through origin power defenses, and were very vicious indeed. "Elder Yu, your opponent is me." Guang Yuan roared loudly. His body trembled, and actually emitted a boundless golden light, as if he was a Buddha. He struck out with a single hand, and shouted, "The power of Buddhism is boundless, send one to the afterlife." Hong, the golden light was dazzling, and indescribably vast. Ling Han did not even give him a second look, and only continued to stride forwards, entering into the Earth and Water faction. He smiled faintly, and said to Hunyo, "Come, come, come, let's compete and see who can smash more things. Nyo will definitely win." Hunyo was in high spirits. Chapter 148. "Madam, please speak. If I can do it, I naturally won't refuse, but if I can't, then I dare not accept this gift," Ling Han said very calmly. The young girl revealed an expression of shock. He could still be so calm after hearing about the effects of this pair of gloves. Was this guy really a youth? Why did he look like an old man who had been through many hardships? Madame Yen smiled, and said, "Since I asked Master Ling for help, then Master Ling will definitely be able to do it. I want to ask Master Ling for help, and ask the master behind Master Ling to concoct a permanent pill for me." "Permanent pill?" Ling Han looked surprised. "Madam has a friend who is in a state of suspended animation." "How did you know?" Madame Yen suddenly stood up, revealing an extremely excited expression. The permanent pill was a black-grade high-level alchemical pill, but it was infinitely close to Earth-grade. The number of black-grade high-level alchemists that could concoct it could be counted on one's fingers. In the past, Madame Yen had also begged Fu Yuansheng and Wu Songlin to concoct it, but the two of them did not have the slightest confidence, and refused Madame Yen. Now, Ling Han could guess the effects of the permanent pill the moment he heard its name, so how could she not believe that there was a grandmaster alchemist behind Ling Han, who was even more awesome than Fu Yuansheng and Wu Songlin? Earth-grade alchemist. Everything that happened in the Cherishing Flower Pavilion naturally did not escape her eyes and ears. Thus, when she found out that Ling Han had a deep relationship with the 2 big shots of alchemy, she guessed that there should be an even stronger alchemist behind Ling Han, or else it would be impossible for Wu Songlin and Wu Songlin to lower themselves to befriend him. This made her decide to befriend Ling Han, and see if she could ask the Grandmaster behind Ling Han to help her concoct the permanent pill. "I guessed," Ling Han said calmly. He naturally would not tell her that he was the alchemy emperor in his last life, and that he had seen and heard of every pill recipe in his last life. The calmer he appeared, the higher his position in Madame Yan's heart. This was called confidence. Master Ling, does the Grand Master behind you have the confidence to concoct this permanent pill? Madame Yan asked, trembling slightly. Sure. Ling Han nodded, a smile appearing on his face. In fact, if it was a few days ago, he really wouldn't have any confidence. This was because this was a pill that was infinitely close to Earth grade, and he could only refine yellow grade pills. However, after merging with the mystical fire, he was confident that he could refine any elixir below the Earth grade. After all, he was once the alchemy emperor. Really? Happiness came so suddenly that Mrs. Yen felt it was unreal. Yes. Ling Han nodded. Many thanks, young master. Madame Yen bowed, her eyes brimming with tears. Ling Han said, give me the materials and come to Huyang University in 3 days to collect them. 3 days. A problem that had troubled her for 10 years could be solved in just 3 days. Lady Yen revealed an expression of surprise and bewilderment. After being stunned for a moment, she said, Shuang, fetch the ingredients for me. Yes, madam. The young girl beside her quickly answered. Her name was Yun Shuang, an orphan adopted by Lady Yen. She had been pampered and raised like her own daughter since she was young. Very quickly, Yun Shuang brought a wooden box. This was much bigger than the one before. Then I will take my leave, Ling Han said, reaching out to take the wooden box. Let me send a carriage to send young master back. Lady Yen pointed at the wooden box in Ling Han's hand. With these 2 items, it would be very inconvenient for him to move. Ling Han actually had a spatial ring, but he naturally couldn't use it in front of Lady Yen. He nodded and said, then I will trouble madam. No need to be so polite, young Master Ling. Lady Yen solved a big problem and couldn't help but be in a good mood. A bright smile blossomed on her face. Shuang, send young Master Ling back for me. Yes, madam. Yun Shuang answered respectfully. Accompanied by Yun Shuang, Ling Han exited the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. There was already a carriage parked at the entrance. Just looking at the carriage, it was a fine horse that was pure white in color, and there was a pair of antlers on its forehead. This was a cloud deer horse, a type of demonic beast. It wasn't very powerful, but because of its good appearance, it was usually used as a mount, and was very expensive. The inside of the carriage was even more luxurious. There were even soft couches to lie down and rest on. There were fresh fruits and fine wine, and one could enjoy all the luxury they could while traveling. Young Master Han, please. Yun Shuang said. She was very curious about Ling Han. Such a young man could actually solve the problem that had troubled Lady Yen for many years. Ling Han entered the carriage, took out the pair of gloves, and began to refine them. Yun Shuang, on the other hand, was extremely gloomy as she sat at the side. She was an extremely beautiful woman, and any man who saw her would want to stick their eyeballs onto her body. Yet this brat was good, and he was only paying attention to that pair of gloves. She admitted that this pair of gloves was indeed very valuable, but it was already his. He could use it at any time, but was she someone that anyone could see? What a silly brat. Ling Han didn't know that in this girl's heart, he had already become a young man who didn't know how to flirt. He studied this pair of gloves, and his palm brushed against the patterns engraved on the surface of the gloves, deep in thought. The use of spirit tools was to increase battle prowess, but usually, it was achieved through the user's own power. For example, if a spirit tool was sealed with the power of ice, then once it was used, it would be sealed in ice for 1,000 miles, and snow would fall for 10,000 miles. It was extremely powerful. This didn't directly increase the battle prowess of a martial artist. But this pair of gloves could directly increase the battle prowess of a martial artist by 1 star. This made Ling Han interested, and he wanted to understand the ingenuity behind it. If he could directly use it inside his body, then wouldn't that be even more amazing? He was unperturbed, like a monk who had attained the Tao. Even though there was a beautiful woman sitting in front of him, he acted as if he didn't see her. Yun Shuang's beautiful face couldn't help but twitch, appearing extremely unconvinced. Too despicable, she was a beauty. Peng, a sudden change occurred. The carriage actually split open from the middle. It was a flash of saber light, and as if it could cut the heavens and destroy the earth, it cut the carriage into two pieces. Who would be so daring to make a move in the imperial city? Ling Han and Yun Shuang both leaped out of the tumbling carriage and stood firmly on the ground. The coachman wasn't injured much. He drove the horse, and with the broken carriage in tow, he galloped far away before stopping. Ling Han and Yun Shuang raised their heads and looked towards a nearby place. On a wall, there was a young man standing with a saber in his hand, exuding an endless domineering aura. Feng Yan, Ling Han, I've said it before. Today, I will beat you up. He cracked a smile, but his expression was cold, and the pressure he exuded was terrifying. This was a person who liked to break the rules. Ling Han thought. In his last life, he was also such a person, not bound by any rules. That was because he had enough power to become one of the 7 great heaven-tier warriors in the world. Wasn't that awesome enough? Feng Yan was definitely not an idiot. Previously, he had confronted the 3rd imperial prince head-on, and now he was openly cutting off the carriage. This was not just any kind of arrogance, he naturally had his reasons for doing so. Feng Yan, you've gone too far. Are you not even giving face to madam? Yun Shuang said angrily. Was he openly challenging the Cherishing Flower Pavilion to a duel? Chapter 149. I've already given face to Lady Yen. Feng Yan smiled calmly. That's why I didn't make a move in the Cherishing Flower Pavilion, and waited here. He had strength, talent, and patience. What a difficult person to deal with. Ling Han thought. To be honest, he even somewhat admired Feng Yan, but the two of them were already standing on opposite sides before they even met, and were destined to become enemies. In his last life, a few 100 million Feng Yans added together would not be a match for a single look from him, but now Ling Han looked serious. The 7th layer of gushing spring tear even had the ability to kill him instantly. Don't worry, I won't kill you, temporarily. Feng Yan smiled, but it was filled with pressure. Feng Yan. Yun Shuang called out loudly. That was enough, all of them did not take the Cherishing Flower Pavilion seriously, and did not take her, a beauty, seriously at all, making her extremely furious. Feng Yan did not even look at her, and simply slashed through the air. Shua, a flash of saber chi danced towards him like an enraged dragon. With a different tier, the power of saber chi would naturally be different. Ling Han estimated that his 6 flashes of sword chi added together would not even be a tenth of this saber chi. But in his philosophy, there was no such thing as surrendering without a fight. Ling Han gave a loud shout and drew his sword to meet the attack, 6 flashes of sword chi crisscrossing. Pang! Without any suspense, he was sent flying by the saber strike. The box in his left hand instantly flew out, but the sword in his right hand was held tightly. As a swordsman, where the person was, so was the sword. Wah! He spat out a mouthful of blood. Looking down, there was a deep wound on his chest, and blood was gushing out, but the indestructible heaven scroll was already circulating, and the wound was slowly shrinking. A hint of caution flashed through Feng Yan's eyes. 6 flashes of sword chi, your power has surpassed my expectations, and your physique seems to be much stronger than normal poly-tier warriors. This strike, I originally intended to heavily wound you. Even so, his tone was still calm, as if everything was under control. Ling Han wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and stood up proudly. He brandished his sword and said, I admit that you are stronger than me now. I will need about half a year's time to surpass you and trample you under my feet. Ha, ha 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 ha. After Feng Yan was stunned for a moment, he suddenly laughed out loud. He nodded, and said, "Your talent is indeed extraordinary. To be able to form 6 flashes of sword chi, you are indeed much stronger than I was back then. However, you will not have the chance to live past half a year. At most, you will have 3 months. Even if you are in the Imperial Palace of Rain Country, I will still drag you out and personally kill you." At the side, Yun Shuang was already dumbfounded, completely speechless. In her heart, both of them were lunatics. Feng Yan was so strong, but Ling Han actually said that he would be able to catch up to him in half a year's time and trample Feng Yan under his feet. And Feng Yan was even crazier. He said that even if Ling Han hid in the Imperial Palace, he would drag him out and kill him. What kind of treason was this? Oh, then bring it on. Let me experience the strength of the strongest prodigy of Rain Country. Ling Han's fighting spirit soared. It was not that he did not have a trump card, which was the strange fire. If he was burned by the strange fire at close range, not to mention gushing spring tear, even a spiritual ocean tear martial artist would die. No need to provoke me. Since I have already said that I will beat you up today, it is useless even if you kneel on the ground and beg for mercy, Feng Yan said calmly, and delivered another slash. Saber chi danced, its power terrifying. Peng Ling Han was once again sent flying, but this time he was much more prepared. His sword created countless ripples, and actually managed to reduce the power of this slash by more than half. Though he was still sent flying and spitting out blood, the injuries he suffered were much lighter than before. Feng Yan could not help but look shocked, and said, "I have only delivered 1 slash, and you are able to grasp the power of my saber and use a strange method to reduce the power of my attack. What a genius! I am actually beginning to hesitate now. A genius that can threaten me like this, should I get rid of him as soon as possible?" When he said the last sentence, he did not conceal the killing intent in his heart at all. Ling Han's left hand shook lightly, and the strange fire could be released at any time. This was currently his strongest killing move. Feng Yan leaped down from the wall, and strode towards Ling Han. With every step he took, there was a feeling as if there was an earthquake. Yun Shuang was shocked, and only then did she realize that it was not that the ground was really shaking, but that her mind had actually been unconsciously manipulated by Feng Yan. This guy was so strong. But she still stood out bravely and stood in front of Feng Yan, because Ling Han was related to the concoction of the permanent pill. This was the most important matter for Lady Yan, and even if she lost her own life, she would ensure Ling Han's safety. "Back off!" Ling Han shouted. He did not need a woman to die for him. "For the sake of Lady Yan, I will not harm you." Feng Yan waved his left hand, and a great force swept over. Yun Shuang was instantly pushed to one side, her pretty face pale. She could not catch her breath, and felt extremely uncomfortable. The 9th layer of Pali against the 7th layer of gushing spring tear, this could only be the result. Feng Yan continued to walk towards Ling Han, his expression cold. It was impossible to tell what he was thinking. Was he going to attack and injure, or kill? Ling Han was on guard. This was an opponent so strong that it almost caused one to feel despair. This little sister is so pretty, could you let me?" It was at this moment that a voice suddenly rang out, and a figure suddenly appeared. He was currently looking at Yun Shuang with a lecherous gaze, and his hands were waving like noodles, looking like he was about to grab her. Yun Shuang jumped in fright, and hurriedly used her hands to protect her chest, taking a step back. If breasts are not enough, then buttocks are fine as well. This person settled for the next best thing, and seemed to be very easy to talk to. This was a man who looked to be in his 20s. His appearance was not ugly, but he could not be considered handsome either. He looked like the most ordinary person on the streets. His face was filled with a vulgar smile, and he drooled at Yun Shuang's figure. Yun Shuang Shuang was so frightened that she took another step back. Good little sister, don't be afraid, I'm just a pervert, not a bad person. This person's expression was filled with righteousness. Pay, even a pervert could be so self-righteous. Feng Yan's eyes narrowed. With his ability, he actually could not figure out how this person had appeared, and now he could not even figure out how powerful this person was, causing him to involuntarily feel a strong sense of wariness. How should I address you, sir? He asked. Ugly man, don't talk to me. This person spat, his gaze fixed on Yun Shuang Shuang. Little sister, what color are your underwear? Yun Shuang Shuang's beautiful face lost all color, and Feng Yan's expression was not good either. He said in a low voice, Sir, are you going to stand up for this brat? You are so long-winded, aren't you annoying? This person turned around and swept a glance at Feng Yan. If you continue with your nonsense, I will beat you even uglier. He turned around to look at Yun Shuang Shuang, and said, Little sister, my name is Gu Fenghua, the peerless Gu Fenghua, a 100% pervert. He said this very proudly, as if being able to become a pervert was a very honorable thing. Reading on a phone is more refreshing. Chapter 150. Feng Yan's expression finally changed, and he could not help but attack. He said, Let me experience your power for myself. He swung his blade, and slashed towards the freak who called himself Gu Fenghua. Bam Gu Fenghua brandished his fist to meet it. It was unknown what technique he had used, but when his fist was swung out, it actually turned pitch black, as if it was made of metal. When it clashed with the long saber, a series of sparks burst out. After this attack, both of them took a few steps back, and a cautious look appeared on their faces. Sir, you should be in the 9th layer of the gushing spring tier, right? Feng Yan said, a proud expression on his face. Otherwise, you would definitely not be able to block this strike of mine. On the other hand, Gu Fenghua's face was filled with shock, and he said, Ugly man, you are clearly not a freak, so how could you have such power? It seemed that in his eyes, all experts were freaks. Feng Yan snorted, and said, Stop trying to mystify me. Today, for your sake, I will temporarily let this brat go. Ugly man, what are you saying out of the blue? How could such a handsome pervert like me possibly know such an ugly brat? Gu Fenghua's face was full of disdain. He turned his head and said to Yun Shuang Shuang, Sister, I know that you are unusually big, and this shirt is a little small for you. Why don't you let big brother measure it for you and make another one? He stretched out his hand and acted like he was going to touch her again, scaring Yun Shuang Shuang into retreating again and again. Feng Yan cast a deep look at Gu Fenghua. There was actually such a young and powerful elite warrior in Rain Country? How come he had never heard of him before? He was a decisive person, and immediately turned around to leave. Pervert, thank you. Ling Han smiled at Gu Fenghua. Yun Shuang Shuang's expression involuntarily changed. It was one thing for this person to call himself a pervert, but it was another thing for someone else to call him that. She might even anger this pervert. You really have good eyes. Gu Fenghua gave him a thumbs up. You can actually tell that I'm a pervert. I'm definitely making friends with you. Puff Yun Shuang Shuang coughed repeatedly. Everyone could tell that you were a pervert, and this could also become something to brag about. Sure enough, the thoughts of a pervert could not be measured by common sense. You're not from Rain Country, are you? Ling Han looked at the other party, thought for a moment, and said, Just now, you used the black iron hand? How do you know about the black iron hand? Gu Fenghua revealed a shocked expression. This was the ultimate technique of his sect, and it was actually recognized by a young man from Rain Country. It was practically inconceivable. His eyes widened as he stared at Ling Han. Could it be that you're also a pervert? The corner of Ling Han's mouth twitched. Indeed, one had to be mentally prepared to become a pervert when communicating with a pervert. He laughed and said, The black iron hand's characteristics are too obvious. When it's activated, the hand will be like black iron, and its strength will continue to increase as one's realm increases. It's definitely not inferior to a spirit artifact of the same level. Gu Fenghua's expression changed again and again. In the end, he revealed a look of joy, and said, "You are indeed a pervert. We can become good friends. Why have you come to Rain Country?" Ling Han repeated the same question. "My master predicted that a rare treasure would appear here, so I came to see if I could take advantage of it," Gu Fenghua said. "I'm sorry to disappoint you. Some time ago, there was indeed an ancient site that appeared, and a high-level spirit artifact flowed out with the flow. However, it's already gone now." Ling Han shook his head. I came here for nothing." Gu Fenghua beat his chest and stamped his feet, appearing to be extremely disappointed. But he immediately broke into a smile, and said, "However, I managed to meet another pervert on this trip, so it's still worth it." Ling Han could not help but break out in a cold sweat, and said, "Only someone with your looks has the right to be called a pervert. My name is Ling Han, and I definitely cannot compare with you in terms of perverseness." "Ha, you're very self-aware." Gu Fenghua appeared to be very pleased with himself. Then, he sighed and shook his head. Since I've missed the opportunity, I'd better continue to return to the mountain to cultivate." Please. Ling Han and Yun Shuang both looked like they were sending him off respectfully. No one could stand this pervert. "Then I'll be leaving," Gu Fenghua said. "We won't be seeing you off," Ling Han and Yun Shuang said at the same time. Gu Fenghua suddenly stopped after walking a few steps, turned around, and asked, "Sister, are you really not going to let me measure you? Get lost." Yun Shuang pointed a finger, forcefully suppressing the urge to kill. "Come, my perversion has not reached perfection yet," Gu Fenghua mumbled. "This time, when I return to the mountain, I'll definitely surpass Master in terms of perversion, and become the most perverted." After saying this, he leaped, and as his figure rose and fell, he had already disappeared into the dark street. The world is so big, and indeed, there are all sorts of strange things. Ling Han said slowly. Yun Shuang said, "Feng Yan actually dared to destroy the carriage of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. When I return, I will definitely report the truth to Madam, and have Madam pressure the Academy to severely punish that evil person." Ling Han shook his head, and said, "You will probably be disappointed. Feng Yan must have gotten some powerful backing this time, so the Academy will not punish him. Otherwise, Feng Yan would not have openly challenged the third Imperial Prince. In terms of reputation in the Imperial City, the third Imperial Prince was definitely not inferior to Madame Yan." Yun Shuang was still panting with anger. She called the coachman over, and they returned to the Cherishing Flower Pavilion together. Meanwhile, Ling Han put the wooden chest into his spatial ring. Since he had promised Madame Yan, and had even received her benefits, he naturally had to do his part and concoct the permanent pill. This time, it was a peaceful journey, and he returned to Huyang University. "The security of the Imperial City doesn't seem to be that great," he mumbled. Feng Yan had blocked the streets and attacked, but there was no sign of the army. He didn't know if it was because their reaction was too slow, or if they had not planned to move at all. "Let's concoct the permanent pill first." He began to concoct the pill. With the abilities of his last life, concocting alchemical pills close to earth grade was naturally a piece of cake, but he did not dare to be careless now. After all, he had to rely on the strange fire to raise the temperature of the flames, and it was impossible for him to control it as he pleased. But for the Alchemy Emperor, this was only something that he needed to pay attention to. Sorting out the ingredients, purifying them, he used all the techniques as smoothly as flowing water. If Fu Yuansheng and Wusong Lin were present, they would definitely pale in shock again, because the speed at which Ling Han was concocting now was many times faster than when he had displayed it in front of them. Previously, Ling Han had only not wanted to frighten them too much. The strange fire burned fiercely, providing a temperature that far surpassed that of Ling Han's cultivation level. This caused Ling Han to sweat profusely, but the sweat was very quickly evaporated by the high temperature. Even his skin was slightly cracked, showing signs of dehydration. Thankfully, his physique was strong enough, and was almost close to body of rock cliff. It was not a problem for him to withstand such high temperature. Half an hour later, 3 different colored flames suddenly appeared on his hands. 3 Fire Guide, this was the signature technique that he had created. The pill is done. He laughed loudly and opened the lid of the furnace. His gaze swept across the furnace, and he revealed a look of astonishment. The strange fire is indeed extraordinary. Originally, it was impossible for me to concoct alchemical pills close to Earth grade, but not only have I concocted them, they have even reached 16-star. This has greatly exceeded my expectations. No wonder so many alchemists in my last life wanted to obtain a ball of strange fire. It is indeed very helpful. If I can fuse more strange fires, wouldn't the quality of the alchemical pills I concoct be even higher? Chapter 151. What's going on? Ling Han asked. Yun Shuang only sobbed. Thankfully, this place was deserted enough. Otherwise, anyone who saw this would think that Ling Han was bullying her. If you don't tell me, how am I supposed to help you? Fine, I'll tell you after you've cried enough. Ling Han opened the door and entered. Just as he was about to close the door, Yun Shuang squeezed her way in and grabbed onto the corner of his shirt with a slender hand. I say, why do all of you like Nyo who tugs at the corner of other people's clothes? Nyo's fine, but men are like this, and women are also like this. It'll really trouble me, Ling Han said with a shake of his head. Hu Nyo nodded heavily, making her attitude clear. Ling Han is Nyo's. Madam, she. Yun Shuang was obviously not in the mood to joke. She had just opened her mouth to speak when she began to cry again. Ling Han sighed, and said, in 3 breaths' time, if you are still crying, I'll throw you out. Naughty Lu Ru'er walked out from the inner room, and glared fiercely at Ling Han. And, it seems that throwing one out is not enough. Ling Han rolled up his sleeves. Ha, damn scoundrel, let me tell you, my cultivation has already recovered by 70%, and I no longer need to be threatened by you. Lu Ru'er said proudly. Then why don't you two hurry up and get lost? Every day, you eat and use my food. Don't you know that it costs a lot of money? Ling Han said exasperatedly. Lu Ru'er instantly exploded in anger. She felt that this guy did not have the slightest bit of tenderness for the fairer sex. She and her sister were obviously rare beauties, but this guy actually did not have the slightest bit of affection for them. He was practically a freak. He shouldn't have the hobbies of the opposite sex, right? That was very possible. Otherwise, how could he possibly ignore the charms of these 2 sisters? When she thought of this, she could not help but shiver all over. However, after being interrupted by the 2 of them, Yun Shuang finally calmed her emotions, and said, please take me in, young Master Han. Shuang has nowhere else to go. Ling Han was startled, and said, aren't you a member of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion? You actually came here to ask me to take you in. What kind of logic is that? Do you all think that this place of mine is a rubbish dump? 1, 2, 3, who knows if there will still be any more in the future? Lu Ru'er was instantly enraged, and said, who are you calling rubbish? Young Master Han, madam is too cruel. Yun Shuang began to cry again. All right. Calm down and speak slowly, from the beginning to the end. Don't cry after every sentence, or I really won't be able to take it anymore, Ling Han said. Come, sit down first. Lu Ru'er rolled her eyes at Ling Han, and walked over to help Yun Shuang into the house. After having her sit down, she even poured a cup of hot tea for Yun Shuang to calm down. Ling Han was Hu Nyo, and Hu Nyo was also Ling Han. The two of them shrugged at the same time. They were the masters, so how did they become outsiders instead? Yun Shuang held the hot tea in her hands, and rested for a while before finally opening her mouth and telling them the whole story. Yan Tianzhao waking up was originally a good thing, but for Yun Shuang, it was the beginning of a nightmare. That was because she had coincidentally overheard the conversation between Lady Yan and Yan Tianzhao. As it turned out, the reason she had been adopted was not because Lady Yan was looking for spiritual sustenance, but because she had an ulterior motive from the very beginning. Cauldron. Lady Yan probably knew that her son would not be able to wake up in a short period of time, but there was only so much golden cultivation time for a martial artist. How could she allow her son to lose at the starting line? Coincidentally, she had mastered a mystical art that was divided into two parts, the main art and the secondary art. The secondary art could be cultivated by one person, while the main art could be cultivated by the other person. When the time came, as long as the two people cultivated together, the person who cultivated the main art would be able to easily devour the cultivation of the person who cultivated the secondary art, and even his life force. And what she had been cultivating since young was the secondary art, all for the sake of helping Yan Tianzhao. The reason why she had not made her move immediately was because Yan Tianzhao had only just woken up, and was just beginning to cultivate that main art. Once he had achieved a small success, he would take action. At that time, not only would Yun Shuang lose all her cultivation, she would also lose her life force, and in an extremely short period of time, she would become an old woman. If Lady Yan had treated me sincerely, I would be willing to die 1,000 deaths for Lady Yan. But this kind of result, I am unable to accept. Yun Shuang's eyes had turned red from crying. Too bad, too bad. Lu Ru'er was also wiping away her tears at the side. Her tear ducts were extremely developed, causing Ling Han to criticize silently, "You are an assassin, can you not be so emotional?" Ling Han thought for a moment, then said, "Lady Yan has been in business for many years, so she definitely has an extremely large network of connections and information in the imperial city. You will not be able to hide from me for long. When the time comes, if Lady Yan comes looking for you, will you be able to resist?" Taking away one's adopted daughter was a matter of course. Even the laws of the empire would support Lady Yan. If Ling Han tried to stop her, then that would be equivalent to kidnapping. Ling Han had a backer, but so did Lady Yan, and her backer was considerably strong. Yun Shuang's pretty face could not help but change color, and her delicate body trembled. If she was really going to be taken back by Lady Yan, then she would rather die. "I've got it. Those two people's injuries are more or less healed. Why don't you leave Rain Country together with them?" Ling Han said to Yun Shuang. That was really good. He could get rid of 3 problems at once. "Who said we are leaving Rain Country?" Lu Ru'er immediately jumped up. "I will definitely kill that traitor. It's more like you're going to die." Ling Han dampened her enthusiasm. "You too, it's better if you obediently continue to cultivate. Su Ku Xian has already been tricked once, so she will definitely not be tricked the next time. You two will no longer have a good chance to scheme against her." Lu Ru'er pouted. She wanted to refute, but knew that Ling Han was right. The difference in power between the two of them was too great, and they had also lost the advantage of taking the initiative, so it was practically impossible for them to assassinate Su Ku Xian. Young Master Ling is right. Lu Feng'er also walked out, and said, "When our injuries have completely healed, we will immediately leave Rain Country. We sisters are very grateful for young Master Ling's care during this period of time, and we hope that we will have the chance to repay young Master Ling in the future." "Ha, if you two leave early, that would be the best repayment to me," Ling Han said without any trace of politeness. N. Hunyo, too, nodded seriously. "This detestable guy." Lu Ru'er gave a humph and said, "Damn scoundrel, if you ever come to Fire Country in the future and are in trouble, remember to look for us sisters. We will definitely take good care of you." She emphasized the word, take good care, and it was obvious that she was very resentful. All right, you can stay with these two sisters tonight, and leave in a few days, Ling Han said to Yun Shuang, pretending that he had not heard anything. Thank you, young Master Han. Thank you, Mrs. Yun Shuang curtsied. Peng, peng, peng. Right at this moment, someone knocked on the door, startling all four of them. Young Master Ling, are you in? A soft and delicate voice came from outside, yet it caused Yun Shuang to involuntarily shiver, and her face had turned pale from fright. Lady Yen. The Lu sisters mouthed at the same time. Ling Han nodded. Kill her. Lu Ruer's killing intent immediately soared. Reading on one's phone was even more refreshing. Chapter 152. The meat-eating little girl had returned. Hug, hug, hug. Hunyo saw Ling Han at a glance, and immediately pounced on him, throwing herself into Ling Han's arms, burrowing her little head into his chest. Ling Han looked the little girl up and down. Why didn't he see any horns or wings? This little girl didn't seem to have changed at all from before. What was going on? After eating 2 portions of godly medicine, the first refined his skin and the second refined his bones. It was as if he had been reborn, and the change was extremely obvious. But Hunyo didn't change at all, wasn't he just eating it for nothing? No, some changes couldn't be seen from the outside. The little girl's body must have undergone a huge change. Sniff, sniff. Hunyo wrinkled her little nose, and suddenly a fierce light shone in her eyes. With a leap, she jumped out of Ling Han's arms, and returned to her beast-like appearance. Her 4 limbs exerted force on the ground, and she quickly leapt out. Aya! Ling Han immediately realized that Hunyo must have smelled the Lu sisters' scent. This little girl was like a wild beast. Not only did she have a shockingly sensitive nose, she also had a strong sense of territory. Now that 2 strangers had entered her territory, the little girl was naturally going to unleash her ferocious nature. Ling Han hurriedly chased after her. With a few leaps, Hunyo arrived at her own room. Without thinking, she directly rammed her way in, and the door was naturally easily smashed. She leapt in like a little tiger, her mouth slightly open, and her hands turned into sharp claws, ready to strike at any moment. Damn pervert, you really haven't given up on your evil intentions. Ever since Lu Ruer had entered Ling Han's body, her heart had been beating like a drum, and her face was as red as blood. How could she possibly sleep? When she heard the sound of the door being broken, she naturally thought that Ling Han's lust was aroused, and he ran over to force himself on her. She instantly shot up and struck out with her palm. Her palm struck Hunyo. Although her power had fallen to rock bottom, after a few days of recuperation, her power would definitely surpass body refining tier. With this strike, Hunyo was instantly sent flying. However, she immediately realized that something was wrong. That was not a big pervert, but a little girl. Ling Han also came in, his hands reaching out to catch Hunyo, who had been sent flying. Damn scoundrel. When Lu Ruer saw Ling Han, she could not help but start cursing. With such a big commotion, Lu Feng'er naturally woke up as well. Her beautiful eyes swept around, not knowing what was going on. Kill! Hunyo struggled in Ling Han's arms. She had not suffered any injury from the attack just now. Ling Han felt relieved and said with a smile, "It's just a misunderstanding. The place you're staying in now is this little girl's room. A few days ago, she wasn't here. Now that she's back, she realized that you're occupying her room. She thought that you were enemies, so she got a little agitated." Not only was he excited, he was about to eat someone up. The Lu sisters thought as they looked at Hunyo's ferocious expression. However, this place belonged to Ling Han, so whatever he said, that was how it should be. Ha, it's late. I won't disturb your rest. Ling Han smiled and retreated. However, there was no way to close the door that Hunyeo had smashed. They'd talk about it tomorrow. Returning to his own bedroom, Ling Han pressed Hunyeo down on the bed, and said, "Little girl, those two girls are temporarily considered friends, don't attack them." Hunyeo pouted to express her displeasure. She hated other living beings in her own territory, but since Ling Han had said so, she naturally could only accept it. However, the little girl was still a little girl after all, and soon forgot her displeasure. She stuck herself into Ling Han's arms, and said, "Hug, hug, hug." Ling Han laughed loudly, and carefully examined Hunyeo again. However, he did not discover any strange changes on her, which made him feel very strange. "That's not right," he immediately shook his head. Previously, Hunyeo had taken a blow from Lu Ru'er, but was completely unharmed. The little girl's physique had indeed been greatly strengthened, but as to what level it had reached, he would have to continuously increase the power of his blows to be able to determine. Whatever, he'd think about it later. The sky was starting to brighten, and Ling Han decided not to sleep, but to begin cultivating. He sat down cross-legged and circulated 5 elements heaven-grade skill. His immortal grade spirit base trembled slightly, and immediately absorbed the surrounding spiritual chi like a whale swallowing. After taking the godly medicine to strengthen his bones, flesh, and meridians, the speed at which he absorbed spiritual chi also increased slightly. It was not that his spirit base had become stronger, but rather that his meridians had become purer, which naturally allowed the flow of spiritual chi to become smoother, which similarly increased the speed of his cultivation. Of course, this was also because his spirit base was sufficiently awesome. Otherwise, even if he absorbed so much spiritual chi, he would not be able to refine it into origin power in time, so what would be the point? Finally, he swallowed an ancient clear pill to increase the speed of his cultivation. Hunyeo became bored after a while, and imitated him, also sitting cross-legged on the bed. Ling Han immediately felt that something was wrong, because another vortex that was absorbing spiritual chi had appeared beside him, fighting for spiritual chi with him, causing his cultivation speed to instantly drop drastically. He opened his eyes, and saw Hunyeo sitting cross-legged in a serious manner. Her small face actually had a dignified air. Yeah. Although he was already certain, he was still extremely shocked when he confirmed it with his own eyes. Hunyeo actually awakened her spirit base, and officially stepped onto the path of cultivation. Inconceivable, how old was this little girl? Normally, one would only awaken their spirit base when they were 11 or 12 years old, or even 1 or 2 years earlier, but this little girl awakened 7 or 8 years earlier. Moreover, judging from the intensity of the spiritual power plundering just now, Hunyeo's spirit base was definitely immortal level, actually comparable to his. One had to know that he had a complete spirit base of all 5 elements, and could be ranked in the front even among immortal level spirit bases, so what was this little girl's spirit base? Ling Han focused his divine sense on his eyes, and used a sliver of the mighty spiritual power from his last life towards Hunyeo's dantian. Huh? Ling Han suddenly felt pain in his eyes, and hurriedly turned his head. He stretched out his hand to wipe his eyes, and actually discovered that his hand was stained with blood. However, he did not care about this, as he was shocked by the scene he had just witnessed. Was this real? He had felt Hunyeo's spirit base, but was that really a spirit base? Ling Han felt that it was inconceivable, and a cold sweat broke out all over his body. In Hunyeo's dantian, that spirit base was actually a person in deep slumber. This was a peerless beauty. Although her eyes were tightly shut, causing her to lose much of her beauty, she was still breathtakingly beautiful. Compared to her, Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan both paled in comparison. Without a doubt, it was precisely this peerless beauty that was absorbing the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, and her efficiency was not the slightest bit inferior to his. Ling Han had never seen this kind of spirit base, it actually took human form. However, this was not what caused him to feel a chill. As he stared at this peerless beauty, she actually opened her eyes, and a terrifying killing intent slashed towards him along with his divine sense. If it was not for the black tower shaking slightly at the right time, he probably wouldn't have just been slashed to the point where his eyes bled, but his divine sense would have been directly destroyed. Cell phone reading was much more refreshing. Chapter 153. The soul was a person's root, and if the divine sense was destroyed, then only an empty shell would remain. Just now, Ling Han had circled the gates of hell. Curiosity really killed the cat. Ling Han shook his head. If it wasn't for the fact that there was also a monster hidden inside his body, he would have really suffered a heavy blow just now. Without a doubt, the godly medicine activated some ability of Hunyo, or made her awaken, and this should have happened 4 or 5 years later. However, Ling Han felt a strong sense of strangeness, because the spirit base in Hunyo's body, that peerless beauty, gave him a feeling that it was even stronger than heaven-tier elites. In his last life, whether it was the Sword Emperor or the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, the two strongest existences in heaven-tier, they couldn't give him such pressure. He estimated that even if he recovered to heaven-tier cultivation, he wouldn't be able to resist such an existence, just like how in his last life, his body was easily shattered by the Black Tower. This definitely wasn't the power of the mortal realm. The Black Tower was mysterious enough, treating his body as its home, but Hunyo was even more extreme, a suspected supreme existence turning into her spirit base. She was obviously just a little girl in the body refining tier. But thinking about it, weren't the two a bit similar? That peerless beauty, could it be that she was also formed from some kind of supreme treasure? To reach such a level, transforming into an incomparably real human form didn't seem strange. What the hell? Ling Han slapped his forehead with his hand. This life was really strange. Not long ago, a shattering void-tier elite had arrived, and he was suspected to have died after being besieged by countless heaven-tier elites. Large quantities of 9th-tier spirit tools flowed out with the flow, and even a stock of immoral godly medicine was born, forming a strange fire. And now, there was another existence that was above the heaven tier in Hunyo's body, and there was also a supreme black tower in his body. It seemed that shattering void tier suddenly became worthless. Hunyo obviously didn't have much patience, and stopped after cultivating for a while. Seeing Ling Han looking at her, she couldn't help but smile, and with a paw, threw herself into Ling Han's arms, rubbing her stomach, and said, "Hungry, that's right, this lass hasn't eaten for several days. Be obedient and cultivate. I'll cook for you. If you don't cultivate properly, you won't get any meat to eat." Ling Han stated his conditions. Oh. Hunyo pouted, appearing very unhappy. She did not like cultivation, it was too dry and boring. Ling Han ran to the kitchen to cook. Since the glutton had returned, the mountain of food here would probably be completely consumed in a few days' time, because he could guess that after this round of transformation, Hunyo's appetite would definitely increase considerably. He was already mentally prepared, but Hunyo's sudden increase in appetite still gave him a fright. His appetite has more than doubled. Fortunately, I have money now, and I can take advantage of the third prince. Otherwise, I really can't support this girl. He shook his head. Halfway through the meal, the Lu sisters also woke up. After entering the kitchen, they were immediately startled, and their pretty faces couldn't help but twitch. Is this really a little girl? When it came to the two girls, Hunyo immediately put on a protective expression. Her eyes stared fiercely at the two girls, and a low growl came from her throat, a fierce expression that said, "If you dare stretch out your hand, I'll bite your neck off." Damn pervert, you really are a pervert. Lu Ruer's beautiful face paled. A young man actually kept a little lowly in his house, this was obviously a big problem. "I'm not a pervert, I'm just a bad guy." Ling Han changed Gu Fenghua's famous words. "Little girl, come here quickly, we'll protect you." Lu Ruer waved at Hunyo, but this kind of action was a provocation to Hunyo, causing the little girl to jump onto the table. She placed all 4 limbs on the table, ready to attack. "Forget it, don't lower yourself to their level." Ling Han helped Hunyao down, and conveniently stuffed a piece of meat into the little girl's mouth, causing the little girl to immediately eat happily. Who are you calling ignorant? Lu Ru'er said, unconvinced. Ling Han only laughed mischievously, and said, you two have been recuperating at my place for quite a few days, right? Shouldn't you pay some rent or something? Hang, don't you want money? Lu Ru'er said disdainfully, how much do you want? Then it's just so, this amount for each person. Ling Han raised a finger. 1 million. Lu Ru'er humphed again, deal. Since you've accepted our money, we are your employers, and we have the right to ask you to do things for us. Che, 1 million. Ling Han shook his head, you should know that if I hand you over, you too will be dead. So, we're talking about selling your worth now. Do you think 1 million is appropriate? Sell your body. You're the one selling your body. Lu Ru'er's face instantly paled, but she immediately said, then how much do you want? 10 million, 20 million. When she said 10 million, even she was shocked. It wasn't that they couldn't earn that much money, but they had just started their career, after all, so where would they find so much savings? You're wrong. You two are as beautiful as flowers and jade, so no matter what, you should be worth at least 100 million. Don't be modest with me, or else I'll send you two to the Cherishing Flower Pavilion and ask how popular the business of two gushing spring tear beauties would be. Ling Han appeared to be very passionate. Lu Ru'er blinked, feeling that it was not good to agree, but it was also not good to refuse. If she agreed, where would she find so much money? If she refused, wouldn't that be lowering her own worth? Her adaptability was not good enough, and she instantly stuttered, appearing to be at a loss as to what to do. Brother Ling, don't bully little sister. Lu Feng smiled faintly. All right, damn scoundrel, you're deliberately playing with me. Lu Ru'er finally came to her senses, her face filled with anger. Silly girl. Ling Han shook his head. If you want to stay here, then you'll have to follow my rules. Someone who enters without knocking is the real scoundrel. Lu Ru'er knew that he was talking about how she had peeped on him bathing last night, and could not help but feel very embarrassed. She could not help but pout. She was not a scoundrel. Who would have thought that there would be someone bathing in the kitchen in the middle of the night? Were you washing pig's trotters or cooking pig's trotters? When she thought of this, she could not help but reveal a strange smile. This was the so-called spiritual victory method. In the future, I'll give you 2-3 meals a day, Ling Han said. He reminded Hunyao not to get into conflict with the two girls, and then told her to focus on her cultivation. He had originally wanted to go to Mo Gao's place, but when he thought that the latter had already started cultivating in seclusion to break through to gushing spring tear, he could only give up. Ling Han moved to a place further away, and sat down cross-legged to cultivate. He did not want to stay too close to the little girl and fight for spiritual qi, which would instead make him unable to fully display the advantage of having an immortal grade spirit base. This cultivation session lasted for almost half a day, and Ling Han revealed a satisfied smile. Now, he would be able to advance a small tier every 5 or 6 days, so it would not be long before he would be able to give Feng Yan a big surprise. At noon, Lu Yutong and Li Xichan both came over, bringing with them a piece of big news. Chapter 154. Early in the morning, the Imperial Guards came to the academy to arrest Feng Yan, but were met with Feng Yan's resistance. In the end, the matter was blown out of proportion and even alerted Lian Guangzhu, who supported Feng Yan and chased the Imperial Guards out of the academy. The Imperial Guards coming to arrest Feng Yan was either the Third Imperial Prince's order or Lady Yan's complaint. Yesterday, Feng Yan had greatly offended both of them. Yet Feng Yan was actually so daring as to resist arrest, and Lian Guangzhu actually supported him. This was really a huge shock, and no one could believe it. Where did Feng Yan's courage come from, and why did Lian Guangzhu protect him so much that he was willing to go against the imperial family? Feng Yan did not say, and neither did Lian Guangzhu. Everyone could only guess, could it be that Feng Yan was Lian Guangzhu's illegitimate son? In just a little less than half a day's time, this kind of rumor had already spread like wildfire in the academy. After that, Feng Luo even issued an order to gather evidence of Ling Han's usual misdeeds. Anyone who provided evidence would be given a considerable reward. Lu Yutong and Li Xichan still did not know what had happened last night, and were both confused and furious. Could this Feng Luo be a cockroach? He's obviously just trash, yet he's always alive and kicking. Ling Han was also very speechless. He had obviously been expelled from the academy, but in the blink of an eye, he was taken back. That's because of Feng Yan, Lu Yutong said with a nod. Who did this guy latch onto that old man Lian is so protective of him? Ling Han asked in confusion. Even if he's an illegitimate son, he wouldn't be doted on like this. Lu Yutong and Li Xichan both rolled their eyes. Only Ling Han would dare to say such things about a powerful warrior of spiritual pedestal tier. Now Feng Luo says that he wants to gather evidence of your crimes. He's obviously trying to disgust you, Li Xichan said. Feng Luo was not a member of the bureaucracy, and the evidence he gathered could not be considered as evidence. He was only trying to disgust Ling Han and ruin his reputation. Ling Han rubbed his nose, and said, "Come on, Feng Yan is still supporting me. Not only does he want to kill me, he even wants to ruin my reputation." Lu Yutong and Li Xichan both frowned. Now that Lian Guangzhu was protecting Feng Yan, even the Rain Emperor would have to give him some face. Thus, as long as Feng Yan did not openly violate the laws of the empire, such as killing someone in the imperial capital, he could completely do as he pleased. Actually, Ling Han could do it as well. There were two big shots of alchemy standing behind him, and in truth, he was even more confident than Feng Yan. However, it was clear that Lian Guangzhu was not Feng Yan's trump card. Feng Yan's support should be outside of Rain Country. In the end, Ling Han said with certainty. The other party had said that he would even dare to kill Ling Han in front of everyone 3 months later. What did this mean? He didn't even care about the Rain Emperor. It was said that there was a powerful warrior of Flower Blossom tier standing guard in Rain Country. Since Feng Yan could ignore the Rain Country royalty, it meant that the power behind him was at least in Flower Blossom tier. There was no other person who could match this in Rain Country. Ling Han rubbed his chin. Should he go and get certified as an Earth-grade alchemist? If he had the halo of an Earth-grade alchemist, then not to mention Flower Blossom tier warriors, even spiritual infant tier warriors would have to be polite to him. However, the highest that could be certified in Rain Country was only a black-grade high-level alchemist, because there was no alchemist of a higher level than this, so there was no witness at all. A black-grade high-level alchemist is enough for now. I believe that even Flower Blossom tier warriors would have to give me some face, Ling Han thought to himself. If he had the halo of an alchemist to protect him, at least no one would dare to make a move against him openly. In this life, though I don't want to walk the path of alchemy anymore, who asked me to be too flashy? I've already gotten into big trouble at the poly tier. He sighed, but his face showed that he did not care. In his last life, he was a powerful warrior of heaven tier, and in the last period of his life, he went to all kinds of dangerous historical sites. The dangers he encountered were all 100 times more serious than this, but didn't he still make it through? As for Feng Yan, he was only a small bump in his path of growth. Now, the only things that could concern Ling Han were that mysterious Black Tower, Hunyou's spirit base that had transformed into a peerless beauty in her dantian and could actually open her eyes, and the third was what had happened to his 4 disciples. That Feng Luo is too despicable. He's obviously a despicable person. I'll go ask Master to step in and expel him. I don't believe that Master Lian will continue to accept him into the academy, Li Xichan said, unconvinced. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, no need, no need. I'm actually wondering what kind of tricks this pair of brothers will come up with. Feng Yan wanted to kill him, so there was no need for him to be polite. When he had accumulated enough power, he would be killed by both Feng Yan and his brother. Not only this pair of brothers, there was also Wu Bo. He ran to the Ling family and started a massacre, so how could he forgive him so easily? Additionally, there was also Xiang. It was time to deal with this old man. Ling Han walked towards Lu Yutong, and asked, "What kind of business does the Qin clan do?" "Clothing." Lu Yutong immediately answered. Obviously, she had also done her homework. Previously, she had not been able to deal with Xiang, which made her feel guilty. "Help me do something. Open a ready-made clothing shop next to all the shops of the Qin clan, and sell them at a price lower than the cost," Ling Han said, as he took out a silver note and stuffed it into her hands. Lu Yutong immediately understood Ling Han's intention. He wanted to crush the Qin clan financially. The reason why Xiang had been able to succeed time and time again was because of the Qin clan's wealth, which allowed him to hire the Earth and Water faction to kidnap people for him. If he had no wealth, the Sun clan would only be able to protect his life. "All right, I know what to do." She nodded, and said, "However, this could be a bottomless pit. Are you sure you want to expend it like this?" Ling Han broke into a smile, and said, "Don't worry, money is not a problem." For a high-level alchemist, money was naturally not a problem. He only needed to concoct some black-grade high-level medicinal pills, and it was guaranteed that he would be fought over. Lu Yutong was finally relieved. She still wanted to say something, but suddenly sniffed, and said, "Why is there the fragrance of women here?" "Oh, I've taken in 2 homeless girls," Ling Han said casually. N. Lu Yutong and Li Si Chan looked at each other, simultaneously showing vigilance. "Where are they?" the 2 girls asked at the same time. When did they become so tacit? Greetings to the 2 ladies. Lu Feng-er and her sister walked out side by side. With 4 great beauties gathered in one room, it seemed as if the room had become much brighter. The 4 girls chattered away, and Ling Han was really bored, so he walked out. Xiao, Hunyo darted out from somewhere and hung onto his body, swinging around like a monkey. "Play." The little girl shook Ling Han's arm, her face filled with a pleading expression. "All right, go play." Ling Han laughed loudly. He had just walked to the door, and when he was about to leave, he saw a young man walk over. When he saw him, he bowed and said, "Zhu Wujiu greets master." Chapter 155. Impressive, truly impressive. Ling Han nodded continuously. According to the description of the sword technique, one must unleash 3,000 flashes of sword rain in order to be considered to have reached the level of great accomplishment. The several dozen flashes of sword rain I unleashed with my sword only managed to reach 1% of the level of great accomplishment. However, the might of each flashes of sword rain is equivalent to a full power attack from me. Even if I were to face it myself, I would have to use the blood-sucking origin gold to transform into a shield to block it. Otherwise, I would not be able to dispel it at all. With this sword technique alone, as long as I break through to the gushing spring tier, I would definitely be able to defeat Feng Yan in a single move. However, that guy should still have some trump cards up his sleeves. It won't be easy to kill him in an instant. Moreover, this sword technique uses up too much origin power. One strike is equivalent to a few dozen full power attacks. If it wasn't for the fact that the space in my dantian has expanded by about 100 times, I would not be able to withstand such a few attacks. The Sword Emperor is indeed a freak. This guy must have taken a spatial pill when he was young. Otherwise, even if he was in the gushing spring tier, he would not be able to withstand such exhaustion. If that's the case, then in my last life, aside from the Sword Emperor, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden also controlled endless fire of karma. She must have fused with a ball of strange fire, or even more. The setting sun saber emperor obtained a treasured saber forged from blood-sucking origin gold, which is also incredibly shocking. There's also Ma Wei Yang, Zi Shuexian, and Na Lan Tuesday. These three people are not simple either. It seems like they all have some kind of secret treasure, and only my battle prowess is the weakest. Now that I think about it, their backgrounds should be very powerful, which is why they were able to step into heaven tier at such a young age. It's only because I relied on the power of alchemical pills that I managed to surpass them even though I started later. This stream of water in the vast lands seems to be much deeper than what I've seen. Forget it, 10,000 years have already passed. These guys should return to dust, and dust to dust. I can't be bothered to think about it. Ling Han recovered his origin power, and once again began to cultivate the second style of black origin sword arts. 10,000 techniques returned to 1. This was a powerful move, and required a certain amount of time to accumulate power. It was as if 10,000 attacks had been fused together into a single attack. In his last life, when Ling Han had obtained black origin sword arts, he had only skimmed through it. Because he had not thought of cultivating it at all, he naturally did not take it to heart. But now that he was studying it, he could not help but pale. Was this really a black-grade martial arts technique? One style could unleash 3,000 full power attacks, and the other style was fusing 10,000 attacks into a single attack. Its power was absolutely insane. Not to mention Earth-grade, even Heaven-grade martial arts techniques would not be this awesome. How could this be possible? If it was Earth-grade or Heaven-grade, then how could he cultivate it now? Body refining and origin gathering tiers could only cultivate yellow-grade martial arts techniques, while gushing spring tier and spiritual ocean tier could advance one step further and cultivate black-grade martial arts techniques. Spiritual pedestal tier could advance one step further and cultivate earth-grade martial arts techniques. Only by shedding one's mortal body and changing one's bones and advancing into the flower blossom tier would one have the right to peek into heaven-grade martial arts techniques. Since that was the case, it should be impossible for him to cultivate earth-grade martial arts techniques now, not to mention heaven-grade. However, he was in the heaven tier in his last life, and clearly knew the power of earth-grade and heaven-grade martial arts techniques. Naturally, he could conclude that the power of the three styles of black origin was definitely not black-grade. Ling Han thought back. No wonder the Sword Emperor had a sour expression as if his parents had died. He had originally thought that with the Sword Emperor's power at that time, he would not care about a black-grade sword technique at all. He had never thought that these three styles would be so terrifying. Then what about the third style? Ling Han did not continue to cultivate 10,000 techniques return to 1. Instead, he put all his effort into developing the third style, and then he was shocked. The third style was called Limit Break, and the amount of origin power it required was practically like an ocean. According to his calculations, even if he had reached the spiritual ocean tier, he would still need to accumulate power for at least a few hours to be able to unleash this style. This was definitely not meant to be used against enemies. A scene immediately appeared in Ling Han's mind. An ultimate elite faced a protective formation, raised his sword, and after a long time, slashed out with his sword. A flash of sword light streaked past, and the entire formation was forcibly sliced into pieces. That's right, Limit Break was used to slash open the protective formation. In front of such a powerful move, even an ancient formation could possibly collapse, and the tens of thousands of living beings within it would be directly killed. This sword technique could no longer be measured by its grade. Ling Han propped his chin up with both hands, and revealed a pensive expression. In his last life, he had never fought with the other 6 heaven-tier elites, because he knew that his cultivation level had all been raised by alchemical pills, and his battle prowess was the weakest. Naturally, he could not be bothered to seek his own humiliation. However, the other 6 often fought with each other, fighting for the position of the strongest and the second strongest. Even if Na Lan Tu, Zi Shuexian, and the others could only be ranked outside the top 3, they were able to exchange blows with the Sword Emperor and not die. In fact, they were not even heavily injured. Now that he thought about it, it was really terrifying. What kind of freaks were those 6 people at that time? Ling Han could not help but feel a little driven mad. In his last life, after he had reached the heaven tier, he had spent all his time on searching for a way to break through to the shattering void tier. Otherwise, if he had gone to investigate the background of those 6 people, he would not be so lost now. From the memory fragments of the blood-sucking origin gold, I could see a terrifying golden age of martial arts. And in a few decades or a few hundred years after my death, hundreds of heaven-tier elites appeared in the vast lands, which meant that I did not understand this world at all. Moreover, there was even a divine object like the Black Tower hidden here, and the little girl's spirit base was similarly astonishing. Interesting, interesting. Ling Han stood up, and once again began to cultivate 10,000 techniques return to 1. This was a powerful technique that he could use against his enemies. If he was given enough time to accumulate power, then no matter how many trump cards Feng Yan had, he would still have the confidence to kill him with a single strike. This consumed too much origin power, and not long after, Ling Han once again sat down and began to swallow alchemical pills, absorbing spiritual qi to recover. Sword Emperor, oh, Sword Emperor, though you have long since died, if your sect was still around, I would really like to find out what kind of place the Heaven Sword sect is, to actually have such a terrifying martial arts technique. He practiced and stopped, and a day's time passed very quickly. Ling Han's current focus was still mainly on increasing his cultivation level. Only by breaking through to the gushing spring tier would he be able to understand the secrets of the Black Tower. Thankfully, this would only require half a month's time. That's right, though he only had 1 large origin nucleus left, if he wanted to strengthen this origin nucleus to its limit, the amount of time he needed had increased by a whole 3 times. On the 2nd day, Lu Yutong once again gracefully came. I'll tell you a piece of good news. Feng Yan has left the academy, and it seems that he has gone to seek some kind of spiritual medicine that would allow Feng Luo's arms to be as good as new, she said. Ling Han was astounded. Could it be that this Feng Luo was really born in the year of the cockroach? His arms have now been reattached. And, they've been reattached, but they're not very flexible, so there's no way for him to exert any strength at all. That's why Feng Yan has gone to seek some spiritual medicine, Lu Yutong said. This elder brother of his was really a competent one. Peng, peng, peng. There was a series of knocks on the door. Hunyo ran to open the door, and very soon, she returned with a person in tow. It was Zhu Wujiu. I broke through to Gushing Spring Tier 7 days ago, and have fulfilled my promise with you. But now that I am here, there is no way for me to become your follower. I can only repay you in my next life, Zhu Wujiu said. Why? Ling Han asked. I challenged Nangong Ji and destroyed his Dantian. Not long after, the academy will capture me. Even if they do not sentence me to death, they will still destroy my cultivation, Zhu Wujiu said calmly, and there was not a single trace of fear or regret on his face. Chapter 156. What do you guys think? Is senior brother Feng Yan really Lord Lian's illegitimate son? In the female dormitory of Huyang Academy, a young girl with freckles on her face was currently asking the other 3 girls with a gossipy expression. If Ling Han was present, he would definitely recognize that one of the girls was Shenzian. I'm guessing so. Otherwise, why would Lord Lian be so protective of him? He's going against the imperial family, a girl with 2 braids said. Not necessarily. Maybe he's the illegitimate son of an illegitimate son, another girl in green said. Shenzian did not speak. Previously, when she was in Sangyin College, she was the most talented, which made her very proud. But only after entering Huyang University did she realize that she was a frog at the bottom of a well. Any random genius here would not be weaker than her, and most of them were stronger than her. Moreover, her birth was lowly, so she naturally could not raise her head high in this academy where nobles gathered. In less than a month, all her pride had been worn away. What enmity does senior brother Feng have with that person called Ling Han that he actually asked his younger brother to gather information on his evil deeds and even gave him a reward? The girl in braids asked curiously. When Shen Zian heard this, her eyes suddenly lit up. Junior sister Shen, you came from De Yuan City, and senior brother Feng Yan and that Ling Han also came from De Yuan City. Do you know what enmity they had in the past? The freckled girl suddenly thought of something and asked Shen Zian. Shen Zian's pretty face darkened, and she said, Ling Han is an ignorant and incompetent, despicable and lowly servant. Do you know how he entered the academy? No. The three girls all shook their heads. He begged his father to exchange his life for it. Shen Zian smiled coldly. What, there's actually such a person? The three girls exclaimed in shock. Of course. Shen Zian poured dirty water on Ling Han. Have you heard of the Dark Demon Forest? I've heard of it. That's an extremely dangerous place. Even spiritual pedestal tier elites don't dare to enter. The three girls nodded. I've heard that more than 100 years ago, a predecessor of the academy entered into the Dark Demon Forest and lost a precious treasure inside. Thus, Ling Han's father came to an agreement with the academy. He would enter into the Dark Demon Forest to retrieve that precious treasure, and Ling Han would be able to enter into Huyang Academy, Shen Ziyan said. This person is too evil. How unfilial. The freckled girl and the other two shook their heads. He was simply a scumbag. For the sake of entering the academy, he actually let his father take such a risk. Shen Ziyan sneered. Rumors were the most marketable. Within a few days, Ling Han would become a rat that everyone wanted to beat up. She hated Ling Han. She had hated him ever since they got engaged. However, after Ling Han's rise, this hatred turned into hatred. She definitely didn't want to be laughed at behind her back, saying that she was blind and missed out on a good son-in-law. Thus, she wanted Ling Han to lose all standing and reputation. Ling Han improved rapidly. After a mere 4 days, he broke through to the 7th layer of Pali. However, he wasn't the fastest. There was another guy that was even more monstrous. Hunyo. The little girl's spirit base was not only extremely strange, but also had an ability to absorb spiritual qi that wasn't inferior to Ling Han's. After she hatched from the egg, she inexplicably obtained a cultivation technique that completely matched the speed at which an immortal-grade spirit base absorbed spiritual qi. Just from this alone, she wasn't slower than Ling Han. More importantly, she could still eat. The ability to refine what she ate into origin power didn't disappear with the awakening of the spirit base. On the contrary, it became even stronger. Thus, in a short 5 days, the little girl reached the 9th layer of body refining tier. It was unknown if the barrier of a large tier could restrain her. After all, this involved comprehension of the tier, and wasn't something that could be done with power alone. However, this wasn't a problem at all. 1 day passed, and Hunyo quietly advanced into Pali tier. It was as easy as drinking water. Ling Han didn't know what to say anymore. Could it be that Hunyo was also the reincarnation of some great elite? That wasn't impossible. The spirit base in the little girl's dantian was really too strange. Not only did it transform into a peerless beauty, it could even open its eyes and almost cut his soul. And in the eyes of the Lu sisters, these two people, one big and one small, were undoubtedly monsters. They had seen how their cultivation had soared so rapidly in a short few days, which gave them a feeling that it was unreal. Indeed, in comparison, their cultivation was higher, but it had to be known that this was after exhausting all the resources of the Falling Flower Palace, which allowed them to reach high-level Gushing Spring tier before the age of 20. However, after that, they would have to rely on their own hard work and talent. But this level of freakishness, one big and one small, was obviously still able to maintain it. This was what was truly frightening. Ling Han wanted to refer to Hunyo's cultivation technique, but the little girl couldn't explain it no matter how hard she tried. She only said that this cultivation technique seemed to be instinctive to her, and would circulate naturally. There was no need for her to understand it, nor was she able to repeat it. On the other hand, thanks to Shen Zian, Ling Han's reputation as a despicable son had spread throughout the academy. Everyone thought that Ling Han had forced his father to sell his life to enter the academy, and could not help but look down on him. In this way, Feng Luo had become a righteous man, and the matter of Wei He-li's expulsion was even brought up again, suggesting that a retrial should be carried out. Perhaps they had wrongly accused Wei He-lu. What should we do? Everyone is saying bad things about you now. Lu Yutong came over. When she mentioned the rumors, she was naturally gritting her teeth. Anyone who came from the Yuan city would naturally know that Ling Han had obtained first place in the tournament to enter the academy. But now, the rumors were so powerful that no one believed the truth. The innocent will know their innocence. If others want to gossip, then let them. If they dare to say it in front of me, I will knock all their teeth out, Ling Han said, completely unconcerned. As a former powerful warrior of heaven tier, how could he possibly take other people's techniques to heart? When he displayed his invincible martial prowess, he would naturally be able to suppress all the rumors. Knock, knock, knock. It was at this moment that they heard a knock on the door. Because the door was not closed, a beautiful face peeked in and asked, "Is young Master Ling here?" Lu Yutong turned her head to look, and could not help but reveal a strange expression. Ling Han's luck with women was a little too strong. He had only entered the imperial city for a few days, and he had already gotten to know so many beautiful women. Ling Han also took a look, and could not help but smile as he said, "Silly little girl, why are you looking for me?" That beautiful woman was Yun Shuang. She had originally been in a good mood, but when she heard Ling Han's words, she immediately exploded in anger. She said in exasperation, "Madam invites you to the Cherishing Flower Pavilion to thank you in person." "Oh, when?" Ling Han asked. "If young Master Ling has nothing important to do today, then let's do it tonight." "All right." Ling Han nodded. He indeed had nothing important to do. Chapter 157. I'll go with you. Lu Yutong immediately said. She naturally knew what kind of place the Cherishing Flower Pavilion was, a gold-squandering den for men, so how could she not worry? Yun Shuang finally glanced at Lu Yutong, bowed slightly, and said, "So it's a noble daughter of the Lu family, Shuang has been rude." Lu Yutong looked slightly awkward, because she did not recognize Yun Shuang, but in her opinion, women from the Cherishing Flower Pavilion were naturally filthy beyond compare, and she did not bother to recognize them. Moreover, the other party was going to drag Ling Han to that kind of place to play, which naturally made her even more displeased. Thus, she only nodded reservedly, and did not even say a word of courtesy. Yun Shuang could not help but show a hint of anger. She was the adopted daughter of Lady Yan, and did not need to entertain guests, so she similarly had a high self-esteem. However, in front of a noble daughter like Lu Yutong, she indeed could not escape being born into a brothel, which made her feel very uncomfortable. Lady Yan said that only young Master Ling is invited. She did not directly confront Lu Yutong, and only used Lady Yan's words to tactfully decline. Nyo wants to go too." Hunyo scurried out and hung onto Ling Han's arm, looking like a spoiled child. "Yes, we'll all go," Lu Yutong emphasized. With Hunyo here, even if Ling Han's lust soared to the heavens, he could only behave. "Let them go together." Ling Han picked up Hunyo. "The older one is willing to listen, but even I can't handle the younger one." Hee. Hunyo's eyes lit up, and she said, Meet. Whether Hunyo went or not, Yun Shuang did not care. She was displeased with Lu Yutong, but since Ling Han said so, she could only say, "Then please come to the Cherishing Flower Pavilion tonight for a chat." Shuang will take her leave. After she left, Lu Yutong's expression became slightly better. Ling Han could not help but smile, and said, "My little female attendant, are you jealous?" Who's jealous?" Lu Yutong's pretty face immediately turned bright red. She was as beautiful as a flower and incomparably alluring. Ling Han laughed heartily and changed the topic. "How's the business of the clothing store?" "Very good, we've already snatched all of the Chen family's business. However, the Chen family will definitely not just sit there and wait for death. After this, they will either start a price war or send people to cause trouble at our shops." Lu Yutong's eyebrows furrowed slightly. After all, those shops did not have the Lu family's banner on them. Ling Han smiled and said, "There's no harm in starting a price war. I'm not thinking of making money in the first place. If they dare to send someone to cause trouble, it'll give me a good reason to go to their door and make a move." Lu Yutong suddenly understood. Indeed, his own store was destroyed, and as the owner, Ling Han naturally had a good reason to make a move. However, the Qin family probably won't make a move themselves. They'll ask someone from the Earth and Water faction. Earth and Water faction. A cold light flashed in Ling Han's eyes. This faction would even do something like snatching a little girl, so it was obvious how dirty they were. He already had the thought of flattening them. "I reckon that the Qin family won't use violence first, but will also start a price war to see if they can make us retreat. I'll take advantage of this time to deal with the Earth and Water faction first." Lu Yutong could not help but look worried, and said, "The Earth and Water faction have colluded with the 8 great clans. If you make a move against the Earth and Water faction, it may attract the 8 great clans to interfere." Ling Han was extremely displeased. In his last life, when had there ever been a time where his hands and feet were tied like this? But who asked him to only have the power of element gathering tier now? Even in a small place like Rain Country, he couldn't dominate. "I'll go to Tianyiji first. I'm spending money like water now, so I have to earn some money," he said after some thought. "Go to Tianyiji to earn money?" Lu Yutong revealed a strange expression. Who would go to Tianyiji not to spend money? But this guy actually had the idea of earning money in Tianyiji. But when she thought of Ling Han's terrifying alchemy ability, it seemed reasonable. "Let's go. Since someone's treating tonight, we'll eat outside for lunch as well." Ling Han carried Hunyou out. "What about the 2 in the house?" Lu Yutong chased after them. She was referring to the Lu sisters. "Oh, it's good enough that you took them in, and you still want me to take care of them, cook 3 meals a day," Ling Han said with a smile. An enchanting smile instantly blossomed on Lu Yutong's face. Obviously, Ling Han had no interest in the Lu sisters at all. Otherwise, he definitely wouldn't act like this. This discovery made her very happy, and even she herself felt it was strange. Bringing 2 beauties, one big and one small, with him, Ling Han arrived at Tianyiji. Young Master Han had just stepped onto the long and wide flight of steps when he saw an old man in his 60s coincidentally walking over. When he saw Ling Han, the old man quickly walked over and called out in a very respectful tone. There were 4 other people behind the old man, and they were all his disciples. When they saw this, they all looked indescribably shocked. This was Grandmaster Yuanchu Yuan, a genuine black-grade middle-level alchemist. He was only 1 step away from being on equal footing with the 2 big bosses of alchemy in Rain Country. But Yuanchu couldn't help but bend his back, and his face was filled with undisguised reverence. That was not an act at all, but respect that came from the bottom of his heart. If Ling Han was Wu Song Lin, or Fu Yuan Sheng, then it wouldn't be strange. Alchemy was the same as martial art. The difference of 1 cultivation level was like the difference between heaven and earth, but he was only a young brat, so how could they not be stunned? Damn it, they all rubbed their eyes hard, not daring to believe it. "You are..." Ling Han only recognized the other as one of the alchemists who had observed his alchemy techniques that day, but who exactly was he didn't know. Pooh! Everyone fainted. Grandmaster Yuanchu, your face is just short of sticking to your shoes, and you don't even know who Grandmaster Yuanchu is? This is really, completely speechless. I am Yuanchu. Some time ago, I observed young Master Han concoct alchemical pills and learned a lot. However, I was immersed in young Master Han's techniques that day, and actually did not know when young Master Han would leave. This is really a sin, and I hope young Master Han will forgive me, young Master Han said in fear and trepidation. Hiss, everyone was shocked once again. With Grandmaster Yuanchu's status, he actually apologized for not seeing Ling Han off. What kind of background did this brat have? It was practically terrifying. Ling Han smiled, and said, no matter. Young Master Han, are you here to concoct alchemical pills again today? Yuanchu asked, filled with anticipation. He had an inexplicable confidence that as long as Ling Han concocted alchemical pills a few more times, he would definitely be able to break through to become a black-grade high-level alchemist. Thus, he was naturally very proactive. Can this old man calculate? Ling Han smiled, and said, that's right, I'm here to concoct an alchemical pill. Please. Yuanchu hurriedly invited him in respectfully. Under Yuanchu's respectful welcome, Ling Han entered the main hall. Young Master Han. Xiaoying immediately came forward, her face filled with pleasant surprise. Now that she had been promoted to a minor manager, she originally did not have to wait at the entrance to receive guests, but she had always wanted to see Ling Han again. Thus, she had been doing this for the past few days, and finally, her wish had been fulfilled. Ling Han smiled and nodded at the other party, causing the corners of Lu Yutong's lips to curl up uncontrollably. This guy was really merciful in all aspects. Chapter 158. Ling Han only nodded at Xiaoying, and came to the third floor of the palace hall with Yuanchu's company. This was the place where high-level alchemists concocted pills and rested. How about this, we won't limit the number of people today. I'll concoct pills, and you guys can observe. Everyone will just have to reluctantly accept 1,000,000 silver coins, Ling Han said to Yuanchu. Pooh! Yuanchu's 4 disciples once again spluttered. 1,000,000 silver coins for concocting pills in one go, were you fucking robbing them? Even the corners of Lu Yutong's mouth twitched. 1,000,000 silver coins for one go, and even if there were only 10 people each time, then concocting pills for one go would net them 10,000,000 silver coins, and 10 times would be 100 million. 100 million. The Lu clan had a large business, and their monthly income was definitely more than 100 million silver coins, but in terms of pure profit, it was definitely not that much, and it was far from that much. A single person could rival an entire clan. No wonder Ling Han was so confident that he could destroy the Qin clan's finances, it was too easy for him to earn money. However, would Yuanchu agree? Really? Yuanchu's eyes widened, and he looked pleasantly surprised. Only 1,000,000 silver coins. Damn! Lu Yutong and his 4 disciples felt like they were going to faint. Yuanchu actually thought that 1,000,000 silver coins was too cheap. Of course, if Ling Han concocted pills a few more times, he would be able to break through. How could a few million silver coins compare? Moreover, as long as he broke through, he would be able to concoct even higher-grade alchemical pills. And with every increase in grade of alchemical pills, the price would also soar exponentially. It could be said that every high-level alchemist was wealthy enough to rival an entire nation. However, most alchemists were not misers, and would use this huge sum of money to improve their own alchemy skills. But as long as they reached black grade, which alchemist did not have a few tens of millions in assets. 1,000,000 was really nothing. Ling Han did not care about money at all. This was only a worldly thing, and when one's ability advanced into the flower blossom tier, money could not buy the cultivation resources they needed. They would have to barter for what they needed. Of course, money was still useful now. Otherwise, Ling Han wouldn't have asked for a viewing fee. Yuan Shu immediately went to call for people, and very quickly, all the black-grade alchemists arrived one after another. However, there were pitifully few yellow-grade alchemists. There were only Li Si-chan, Qi Zhantai, and a few others, and finally, Fu Yuansheng. Old Fu, you came at the right time. Help me collect the money, Ling Han said bluntly. This time, Yuan Shu's 4 disciples really fainted. That was Fu Yuansheng, one of the 2 big shots of alchemy in Rain Country, yet in Ling Han's mouth, he had become Old Fu. Fu Yuansheng, however, immediately came forward with a face full of smiles. To be able to serve a Grand Master of Alchemy, that was his honor. Speaking of which alchemist here had not started out as an alchemy apprentice, and had done quite a bit of work to assist others. Therefore, not only did the crowd not look down on him, they were full of envy. To be able to serve a grandmaster, it really makes people jealous. Everyone happily handed over the money. Only Li Si-chan and Qi Zhantai were exempted. Black-grade alchemists really did not lack money. Today, I will be concocting foundation building pills. Everyone knows that this is a black-grade high-level alchemical pill, so I will take the opportunity to be certified as a black-grade high-level alchemist, Ling Han said. Foundation building pill. When they heard Ling Han mention the 3 words, foundation building pill, everyone looked astonished. There were many types of black-grade high-level alchemical pills, and the difficulty of concocting them naturally varied greatly. Normally, they were divided into 4 categories: easy, difficult, extremely difficult, and almost impossible. The so-called almost impossible was actually a pill close to earth grade. Being able to concoct such an alchemical pill meant that one would definitely be able to break through to earth grade. Foundation building pill was precisely the almost impossible to concoct. This kind of alchemical pill could help a spiritual ocean tier cultivator build his foundation and prepare for building his spiritual pedestal. It was one of the rarest alchemical pills for breaking through. The first was the difficulty of concocting it, and the second was the effectiveness of the completed pill, which allowed the foundation building pill to become a pill close to earth grade. For a martial artist, there were 3 types of alchemical pills that were the most valuable. The first was to increase one's cultivation level, the second was to help one comprehend martial art, and the third was to break through. If these 3 types of alchemical pills were to be ranked, then it would be the other way around. Alchemical pills for breaking through were the most valuable, and also the rarest. Alchemical pills that could prolong one's life were not included, because only natural medicines could have such an effect. Concocting such pills would only have the opposite effect. Everyone here had heard of the foundation building pill, but in a small place like Rain Country, no one could concoct it, including the 2 big bosses of alchemy. And if this kind of alchemical pill could be sold in large quantities, one could imagine how many powerful spiritual pedestal tier cultivators would appear in Rain Country. This could very possibly overturn the power structure of Rain Country. Just thinking about it made these people's scalps go numb. An alchemist changing the power structure of a country sounded like a dream. I want these ingredients, Ling Han said to Fu Yuansheng. The foundation building pill was ranked close to earth grade because of its difficulty in concocting and its effects, but the ingredients required were not much different from normal black grade high-level alchemical pills. Tianyuji would definitely have them. As expected, Fu Yuansheng immediately nodded and waved his hand to have someone open up the storeroom to retrieve the ingredients that Ling Han needed. Calculate, how much is it? Ling Han said with a smile. How can we take young Master Han's money? Fu Yuansheng hurriedly waved his hand. Yet Ling Han insisted, saying, I must take it. Once he took the money, the foundation building pill that was concocted would belong to him. How much were the ingredients worth? 1 million or 2 million could be used to form the pill. Don't think it's too expensive to bid for 10 million. It was guaranteed that there would be a lot of people fighting over it. Fu Yuansheng could only smile sheepishly. He wanted to take a completed pill and study it carefully. One had to know that the success rate of forming a close-to-earth grade alchemical pill was shockingly low. If a cauldron was filled with 10 ingredients, then it would be very good to have one completed pill. 2 was practically nature-defying. Black-grade high-level ingredients were still very expensive. A single cauldron of ingredients was worth as much as 3 million. If the cauldron exploded, then that would be burning up 3 million silver coins for nothing. But as long as he managed to concoct just one pill, then not only would he be able to break even, he would also be able to earn a huge profit. This was a high-level alchemical pill, and it was a rare type of high-level alchemical pill, so it was worth this price. Ling Han had completely come empty-handed. He had come empty-handed, and had earned 18 million just by selling the observation fee, yet he had only paid 3 million now. And with his ability, what was a close-to-earth grade alchemical pill? Even if he could only concoct 3 pills, just thinking about it, the value would still be terrifyingly shocking. Everyone, please be careful. I'm about to begin, Ling Han said. Because these people had all paid, he was also giving them a reminder. Everyone's eyes widened. Not only would they be able to observe the alchemy skills of a grandmaster, they would also be able to witness the birth of a cauldron of close-to-earth grade alchemical pill. Just thinking about it made their scalps go numb. Ling Han's expression gradually became serious. When it came to alchemy, he would never be careless. After taking in a deep breath, he suddenly began to move. Instantly, his movements were as smooth as flowing water. It was very pleasing to the eye, as if it was in accordance with some kind of natural law. Chapter 159. Ling Han saw a fragment of that great battle in the shards of the blood-sucking origin gold. What he could be sure of was that the giant of origin gold had definitely been defeated. In his previous thoughts, that giant should have been dismembered, with its shards scattered everywhere. But there was also another possibility. For example, that giant of origin gold had only been partially destroyed, and the majority of its body was still intact. If that was the case, then it would not be strange for the giant of origin gold to be suppressed in the mystery realm, and part of its shards appearing in Rain Country. Of course, the possibility of this was very small, pitifully small. But when he thought of how terrifying the giant of origin gold was, Ling Han still decided to go to the Devil Sky mystery realm. If that giant of origin gold was really suppressed below, then he definitely had to ensure that the seal was being strengthened, and not being undone. So many years have already passed. Even a monster like the giant of origin gold should have died by now, right? Ling Han comforted himself like this. But for an existence like the giant of origin gold, even if it had really died of old age, its indestructible body would still be able to give birth to a second life. It was just that it would be a completely different person. No matter what, he definitely had to go to this Devil Sky mystery realm. How do I enter the Devil Sky mystery realm? He asked. Very simple. After the mystery realm opens, teleportation doors will appear in various places, and after passing through, you will directly enter into the mystery realm, Lu Yutong said. She paused for a moment, then continued, the reason why we know that the mystery realm has opened is because these doors have already appeared. This time, 3 doors have been discovered in Rain Country. The closest one to us is 300 miles east of the Imperial City, Li Sichan said. Ling Han nodded, and asked, in the Devil Sky mystery realm, aside from the blood zombies, are there any other dangers? The humans inside have all died, but there are still some demonic beasts, and they seem to be trapped inside, so there is no way to bring them out. Moreover, we are unable to stay inside for long, as we will be rejected. After a certain amount of time, we will be automatically expelled from the mystery realm, Lu Yutong answered. It is said that there is a terrifying existence in the depths of the mystery realm. That is a restricted area, so we will just be wandering around the outer perimeter. After such a long time, the mystery realm has finally reappeared, so there will definitely be a large amount of spirit grasses that have matured. That is our main target, Li Sichan said. Lu Yutong nodded in agreement. Cultivation techniques and martial arts techniques had been plundered from generation to generation, so it was practically impossible for them to be left behind. However, spirit grasses were different. They had harvested a batch this time, and the next time would be at least a few decades later. Especially this time, it had only reappeared after 300 years, so there would definitely be a large amount of spirit grasses waiting to be harvested. What about the restrictions for entering the mystery realm? Ling Han continued to ask. In short, the lower the cultivation level, the easier it is to pass through. However, it is not certain every time. Sometimes, even spiritual pedestal tier warriors can enter, and sometimes, even gushing spring tier warriors cannot pass through, Lu Yutong said, shaking her head. Ling Han thought for a moment, and felt that there was no harm in doing so. Firstly, he had not offended any powerful warriors of spiritual pedestal tier. Secondly, if even spiritual ocean tier warriors could enter, then he had Guang Yuan by his side. Thirdly, if only those below gushing spring tier could enter, then he would not be afraid at all. Even if he encountered elites like Qin Yi or the eldest imperial prince, he would at least have the ability to protect his own life. Moreover, wasn't Qin Yi now his underling? Not long after, Huyang Academy made an announcement, ordering all the students to immediately set off and enter the Devil Sky Mystery Realm. The first priority was to head to the center hall to carry out the blood sacrifice. If there was not enough blood, then blood zombies would come out to wreak havoc in the world, and who knew how many people would die then. Very soon, Qi Yongyi, Li Dongyu, Jin Wuji, Bailey Tingyun and the others all ran over to Ling Han's side. They were all from the Yuan city, so they naturally had to form a group and help each other. Brother Ling, your cultivation level. Qi Yongyi was the first to notice, and could not help but be greatly shocked. How did it drop to the first layer of element gathering tier? Jin Wuji and the others all sensed Ling Han's aura, and indeed, it looked like he only had one origin nucleus. Expressions of disbelief also appeared on their faces. They had only heard of people being stuck at a certain level, unable to break through for a long time, but this was the first time they had seen someone's cultivation level actually drop so drastically. Ling Han laughed, and naturally would not explain. He said, since everyone's here, let's set off. Qi Yongyi and the others also knew that Ling Han's awesomeness was actually in the field of alchemy. In the Yuan city, he had already made 3 black-grade alchemists bow down to him, and now he was even more awesome. Even black-grade middle-level alchemists had to kneel down and lick his boots. In this way, what did it matter whether Ling Han's cultivation level was higher or lower? They set off, and Ling Han even made a trip to Heaven's Medicine Pavilion to call Li Hao over. Only then did the group leave the Imperial City, heading east. On their way, there were more and more people. The Devil Sky Mystery Realm was not only related to cultivation techniques, spirit herbs, and other good things, but also required a large number of people to use blood sacrifices to prevent the blood zombie from coming into being. Thus, no matter what kind of ability one had, it was best to send in some fresh blood as a sacrifice. This was a matter of great importance at the national level, and the power of the imperial family had already been effectively mobilized, mobilizing personnel from various cities to advance towards the Devil Sky Mystery Realm. Half a day later, Ling Han and the others arrived at the location of the teleportation door. Rather than calling it a door, it would be better to call it a vertical whirlpool. There was a black halo spinning around it, and it was about 10 meters tall, looking very majestic. This teleportation door did not have a front or back, and no matter which side one jumped in from, the person would immediately disappear, as if they had been swallowed alive. Ling Han nodded internally. In his last life, he did not have such a method, and it would only work if he was an ultimate elite of Shattering Void tier. Some people had already entered impatiently, while others were still waiting outside, as if they wanted to form a group and wait for a large group of people to enter together. And before everyone entered, they would be branded with a mark and given a map. The mark represented the people of Rain Country, and the map was very simple, only marking the location of the central hall. The people of the 9 nations of the desolate north could all enter the mystery realm through the teleportation doors of various places, and it was not limited to the citizens of Rain Country. For example, Rain Country and Fire Country were bordered by each other, and conflicts would frequently erupt. In the past few thousand years, who knew how many people had died, and they had long since become mortal enemies. Once they met, they would definitely fight to the death. This mark was used to distinguish enemies, and was directly branded on the back of one's hand. It could last for close to a month, which was more or less enough. And this time, the suppression of the teleportation door was not particularly strong. Even spiritual ocean tier martial artists could enter, but spiritual pedestal tier martial artists could not. Ling Han. A voice that was gnashing his teeth in anger was heard, filled with endless resentment. Ling Han turned his head, and could not help but have a strange expression on his face. Feng Luo. Did this guy have the fate of a cockroach? He actually appeared again. Moreover, his 2 arms were indeed reattached, but they were obviously not as nimble as before. It was as if they had been forcibly glued onto his arms, and they were dangling on both sides of his body, which was very strange no matter how one looked at it. After all, it was already very good that his arms could be reattached, and if they were still as nimble as before, that was practically illogical.